Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name's Michelle, and we're in the final video for our A Court of Mist and Fury recap series. How exciting. And it's a good one. Obviously, you know things are always going to go cuckoo bananas in the last little bit of a Sarah J. Maas novel. Like, put on your seatbelts, hold on to your pants. Things are about to get crazy. But before they do, I do want to do a little recap. Little recap-a-roo. So Feyre is now full-time living at the Night Court for about 2 months now, and despite a letter she sent to Tamlin's house where she was like, hey, I'm never coming back, Tamlin sent Lucien to go pick Feyre up. Lucien was able to track down Feyre while her and Rhys were out doing some training, and Lucien was like, I'm taking you back to Tamlin, and Feyre said, absolutely not. I'm a Night Court girly now. She said, I'm part of the darkness, so you can't have me back. We'll see how that goes. But she's officially told Spring Court, leave me the heck alone. She has been learning to fight with Cassian, also working on her powers with Rhys. So she's been training. She's a powerful lady because she has a little bit of the power from every single High Lord in all of Prythian. So she's quite a diversity of powers, and she's slowly been learning how to use them. Currently, our big bad that we're trying to deal with is the King of Hybern. He has the Cauldron, which is this source of life for everyone on Prythian, and he's trying to use it to bring back Jurian, who's the guy from the Eyeball Ring in the first book. So to counteract the Cauldron, the Night Court girlies have trying to gather the pieces of the Book of Breathings, which is this magical book situation. They got the first half from Summer Court. They stole it. Sorry. And now they've been trying to get the other half from the Mortal Queens, but the Mortal Queens half is warded so that the Mortal Queens have to gift it to them, freely, and they can't, steal it like they did with Summer Court. So they are trying to negotiate that, and they got the Veritas Orb, which is this, mystical, magical orb that tells the future. It's, connected to Mor's bloodline, and they're going to use that to help them convince the Queenies that they are clearly responsible and stuff, and they should have the other half of the Book of Breathings. But the big news from the last video is that Feyre and rhysand are mates. Rhys is known for at least 6 months, a little more than 6 months, he's suspected. Feyre feeling quite betrayed by this. She found this out because the Suriel told her. The Suriel was like, did you even know that he's your mate? He really, this is why people love the Suriel, because the Suriel is out here just gossiping, dropping all of this information on Feyre. And she did not know, but now she does know, and she's really mad that Rhys kept that secret from her, and so she goes to this mountain cabin. She has Mor winnow her away to this mountain cabin to just kind of think about her life and her choices. And that's where we'll pick up. In part 3, The House of Mist. The parts of this book I feel actually serve no purpose. They're just kind of for fun. Feyre is at this cabin. Mor's left. She's all alone now, and the first thing she does is take a bath. There's this huge bathtub that is designed obviously to be able to fit Illyrian wings inside of. And honestly, that sounds like a solid plan. I think that's probably a good strategy for most problems like this. She's spending a lot of time thinking about what it would mean to be Rhys's mate, and about just how she feels around him, especially when he was on death's door, and the level at which she cares about this man, and how it kind of makes sense that they have a deeper connection than just friends or even romantic. And she makes herself some soup, puts on a cozy sweater, and is just hanging out in this cottage, having some alone thinking time. And Feyre's actually, you know what, being Rhys's mate does make me feel less bad about all the Tamlin stuff, because obviously I couldn't help it. If I'm Rhys's mate, then obviously I wouldn't have never worked out with a blonde man. So ow, I stabbed my own finger on the desk. That really hurt. I think I'll make it though, don't worry guys. She's that does make me feel a little bit better, because there's nothing I could have done to make it really work with a blonde man long term. I was always going to be drawn to Rhys. She doesn't forgive Rhys for hiding this from her, but she does kind of start to think about the reasons he wouldn't have said anything sooner, and kind of realize that maybe some of them did make sense. And when she goes to bed, she's in this big bed by herself, and she's oh, I kind of miss him. It was kind of nice to have him in bed with me the past 2 nights. She wakes when the sun rises because she forgot to close the curtains, and she starts to feel a little bit bad about running away, because it is exactly what she promised Rhys she wouldn't do. Literally the day before, they were flying around, and she was like, Rhys, whatever you have to say, don't worry, I won't run away, not from you. And then literally the next day, she was and she scurried away. So she does start to feel a little bit bad about that. Also, maybe a little bad about the fact that he was truly on death's door. Death's door. And she was just like, I'm leaving. Anyway, by the middle of the day, Feyre starts to get bored, which, like, honestly, I would have gotten bored sooner than that. I would have been bored last night. I would have been like, so, like, what am I supposed to do with myself in this cabin all by myself? And she starts to, like, get nosy and starts digging through all the, like, closets and drawers. It feels very much like a family cottage. It does not feel like a High Lord's, like, escape. You know, it doesn't have the same feel as the palace or even as the townhouse. Like, it is definitely something much more modest in terms of, like, what the cabinet itself is. But as she's going through kind of the storage room, she finds a bunch of cans of paint that have been, like, opened but not touched. And so she starts painting. And this is the first time she's painted since Under the Mountain. I think because the cabin painting scene is, like, notorious, everyone loves to chat about the choices that Feyre makes when it comes to this scene, because she is painting on the walls. But I, like, rereading this, I was like, oh, but this is, like, the first time she's painted since she was Under the Mountain. This is the first time she's painted in over 6 months, and this was, like, her greatest passion. And to be in this place where she's, like, really upset, but she's able to, like, process that through her art and her painting is, like, I kind of know, like, so sweet. I think it's kind of nice, even if maybe I wouldn't have painted my boyfriend's family cottage personally. Moore comes back to check on her, and Moore is like, well, you've certainly busy. She looks around, and the cabin is, like, covered in paint. Because Feyre did not paint on canvases, she painted on literal every surface in this cabin, like the walls, the tables, the dressers, the fireplace. Like, she's painting everywhere. And it's, like, the same way she had decorated her own family's cottage, which is also, I think, really sweet. This kind of acceptance of her role as, like, belonging to this family, like, accepting herself into this family by adding herself to this cottage in the same way that she had added little, like, details of beauty to her own family house. She's doing to, like, this family cottage as well. Again, would I have done that? No, it seems kind of rude, but, like, symbolically, I think it's nice. They're little representations of all of them. They're little, like, she's painting little representations for all of them, of Cassian and Azriel and Moore and Amren, and even Rhys in some spots. There's, like, things that remind her of these people that she's grown close with over the past couple months. Moore comes in, and she starts to, like, make some suggestions about additions, because Amren's eyes are over the door right now, and Moore requests to add her eyes too, so the boys will know that they're always being watched, because I guess the boys come up here for, like, hunting trips and, like, boy trips. They take boy trips up to the cabin. And there are also a pair of Illyrian wings, like, over the fireplace, and she's like, the boys are gonna love those. And then Moore kind of explains that the paint is there from Amren. Amren had, like, decided that she was going to do painting one time when they were up there, and then gave up on it pretty quickly. So that's why there's so much, like, unused paint. And then she says there's no update from the Mortal Queens yet. And Rhys is fine. He's recovered. And he's really mad that Moore won't tell him where his girlie is. He wants to know where his girl is. He wants to know where his girly pop is. But besides that, it's fine. And Feyre is like, thank you so much for not telling him about where I am. Like, thank you. I appreciate that. And Moira's like, no problem. But, like, eventually you are going to need to hear him out. And Feyre is like, yeah, I know. Like, she's already kind of forgiven him. She's like, yeah, I, like, will. I'll hear him out, and I'll probably be cool with it. I just, like, needed a second. And then Moore gives an update about how Kira's doing back at the Court of Nightmares. He's healing. Moore broke a couple more bones while she was there just for fun. And then Moore is talking about kind of her relationship with Court of Nightmares, because Feyre's like, it's kind of mean that Rhys makes you be the, like, go-between between the Court of Dreams and the Court of Nightmares. And Moore's like, no, like, I have permission to kill everyone in the Court of Nightmares whenever I want. And so part of the reason I go is to, like, remind them of that power and to kind of rub it in their faces to some extent, as well as to maintain the communication between the two courts. And that made me think, and I, like, probably should have thought of this earlier, but it made me think, like, where does the Court of Nightmares think Rhys and everyone lives? They see them all, like, once a month. Less, probably, for some of them. Where do they think they live? What do they think they're doing all the time? Like, Moore, Cassian, and Azriel were in Velaris, I think, the entire time Rhys was under the mountain. Maybe they went between, maybe they, like, left, came back and forth. But, like, I don't think they did. I don't think they did at all, actually. Has no one asked questions about this? I would ask questions. Anyway, Feyre again asks about the Cassian, Azriel, Moore love triangle, and girl, we just don't care. Maybe someone did. I never did, and I shan't now. in a couple chapters, we'll see some Cassian Nesta flirtation. I'm interested in that. Write me down for that one. That one I really care deeply about. But this, I don't care. Moore's like, I'm not interested in either of the boys. Please leave me alone. And Feyre's like, I just want to understand how, like, the dynamics of the friend group work. And Moore's like, there's too much history for us to unpack. And then Moore says to Feyre, is it so bad to be his mate, to be a part of our court, our family, our tangled history? And Feyre's like, no, it's not. Moore spends the night that night and adds a couple things to the wall, mostly just stick figures. Moore's not really interested in, like, art. So her contributions are pretty minimal. And then Moore leaves in the morning. And Feyre, again, is alone in the house. It's crazy to me that Feyre at this point doesn't just tell Moore to, like, go get Rhys. She's like, I need a few more days by myself. Like, girl, we have stuff to do. Like, aren't you bored? I don't know. Moore's coming back in 3 days, and Feyre's going to just hang out here for 3 days, and they're not going to tell Rhys. Even though at this point, Feyre has decided that she is going to forgive Rhys. Like, she's firmly decided this. Okay, whatever. She starts to picture what her future might look like if she does return to Velaris, and how she, like, has this image of herself finally walking through the artist quarter, and eventually, years from now, like, opening a shop in the artist quarter, not to sell her paintings, because girly doesn't need money. Girly is rich now. She wasn't poor before, but now she's made it to the High Lord. She's got that good money. It's under her name too. Anyway, so she's not going to sell paintings, but, like, as a teacher, she's going to teach painting to people. I love this for Feyre, but also Feyre's never taken an art class. I'm not saying Feyre is bad, although I think I did speak on this in ACOTAR. I do believe she started bad. I do think when she first painted for Tamlin, she wasn't very good, and she's probably not, like, the best currently. She's only been painting for really a few months, and she took a long break. Like, I don't think she's, like, outstanding. I don't think she's, like, horrific, but, like, I don't think we should be teaching people. Like, she's no education on, like, color theory and technique or anything. Like, maybe you could go take some classes first. Although, like, maybe she's hoping to, like, really go with, like, the Rhys school method of teaching, which is just you don't tell people to do it. You're like, paint that. You're like, see those flowers? Paint them. Anyway, she imagines that, like, as part of her day, and then she imagines, like, end of the night going home to the townhouse and, like, having dinner surrounded by her friends. And then she imagines, like, Rhys in all of these places with her, and at the end of the night being able to, like, go to bed with him and for them to, like, whisper back and forth about their days and, like, how beautiful life that would be. She thinks to herself, and there it was, a future. The future I saw for myself, bright as the sunrise over the Sidra, a direction and a goal and an invitation to see what else immortality might offer me. It did not seem so listless, so empty anymore, and I knew I would fight until my last breath to attain it, to defend it. So I knew what I had to do. Okay, so she's been up here for 5 days now. 5 days now. Moore stops by with more paint and food, and Feyre is getting bored. Well, like, 5 days pass. Moore stops by in the middle with more paint and food. Feyre still doesn't have Moore go get Rhys. Girl, are you going to stay up here forever? No, because then there's another knock at the door. There's me knocking on the table for sound effects. I'm a Foley artist now. And it's, like, banging. Really aggressive. And she's like, oh, geez, Moore. She gets the door, opens it. It's not Moore there. It's Rhys on the other side of the door. He's looking freezing cold. And she knows she could send him away. She's like, if I told Rhys to leave, he would leave without another word. But instead he just stands there and waits until she invites him in. Which, honestly, a little suspicious, Rhys. Vampire vibes? Mr. Edward Cullen. And Feyre, kind of picking up on these vampire vibes, does not invite him in with her words. She just steps aside and kind of, like, gestures inside, which, as I think is pretty common knowledge, is not enough to, like, bring a vampire in, but will work on your, like, human or apparently fae friends. So, great news. Rhys comes in, and he's looking at her paintings, because how could you not? How could you not, truly? And Rhys is like, you painted us. And he sees that everyone's eyes, except Rhys's eyes, were not included. Kind of rude. And Rhys is like, hey, why aren't my eyes above the door with everyone else's? And Feyre says, I was afraid to paint them at first because I was so mad at you for not telling me. And then because I was worried I'd like them too much and find that you didn't feel the same. Then because I was scared that if I painted them, I'd start wishing you were here so much that I'd just stare at them all day. Okay, that's a little pathetic. And then Rhys says, Moore wouldn't tell me where you were, and I had to fly from place to place, so Hybern couldn't track me. He, like, explains that, like, they have, like, not a ton of holdings. They have, like, a lot of real estate as the High Lord of the Night Court family. But And he wasn't sure like which property Moore had put her in. And so he had to like check all of them, and he had to like fly between them. And that's why it took him so long to finally get here. And then Feyre's like, you must be hungry. I'll heat something up. And Rhys says, you'd make me food? And Feyre's like, I'd heat some food. I can't cook. And this moment made me go, you can't cook, Feyre. Who cooked your food at your house? Because that's never mentioned that Feyre can't cook, which means likely one of her sisters cooked, probably Elaine, to be honest, but like one of her sisters cooked. That is also like an important piece of this. Like they're not getting pickup from McDonald's. Like Feyre's bringing like raw animals that need like butchered, and maybe Feyre's doing the butchering, but like someone else is like cooking the food that they have and turning it into meals. Sorry, there are like multiple jobs that need doing. We don't need everyone in the forest hunting. Should we have sent the youngest of us? I mean, yeah, in this situation, I do think Feyre probably would have been the best at hunting. I think this is one of those situations also in which maybe people didn't realize how much work everyone else was doing. You know, sometimes when like you know how much work your work is because you're the one doing it, and you like look to your left and your right, and you're like, they're clearly not doing as much work as me, even though you can't like truly see what they're doing because you're busy doing your work. And Feyre was out hunting a lot of the time, so maybe she wasn't seeing the work her sisters were doing, because it does seem like they were doing some stuff to keep the house running, because it's more than just like getting food into the home that needs to happen. I know Feyre gave instructions on like how to prepare the meat, but also Feyre was micromanaging everyone back at the cottage. Feyre was kind of annoying and bossy. This line I was just like, so who cooked, Feyre? Someone did, and that is an important job. Anyway, that's really not important to this scene, though. Feyre says, I don't know the rules, so you need to explain them to me. Thank goodness she said this, because cooking food, as Rhys is about to explain, is very important. Can you imagine if Rhys didn't explain this, and Feyre just, like, gave him a sandwich? And then Rhys was like, you've accepted the mating bond. Rhys, you have to explain things without people asking first. He does explain now, because she did ask. It's an important moment when a female offers her mate food. It goes back to whatever beast we were a long, long time ago, but it still matters. The first time matters. Some mated pairs will make an occasion of it, throwing a party just so the female can formally offer her mate food. But it means that the female accepts the bond. And Feyre's like, okay, tell me the story. Tell me everything. And like the offer in this is like very clear to like both of them, being like Rhys has until the soup is heated up and he is served. Well, she'll decide whether to serve him. Rhys has until the soup is heated up to like convince Feyre that like she should offer the soup to him. When I was making these notes, I put a note here that said, TBH, I actually realized it's crazy that they have canned soup here. Like canned soup wasn't invented until the 1890s. Like literally after cars were invented. Like a can of soup, like a tin can of soup was invented in the 1890s. Like the first automobiles, not like everyone had a car, but like the first automobiles had been invented already when canned soup was invented. And like, I guess maybe they mean like can is in like a jar. Like you can things in mason jars. I don't know. I have like questions, okay? I'm not super concerned with the historicity of this time period because I don't think this is grounded in a particular historical time period, and that's not a problem for me in general. But like canned soup did make me go, Anyway, Rhys begins his story. He says, he begins so long ago. He begins so long ago. Oh my gosh, this is where he starts. He was captured by Amarantha's army, and Azriel and Cassian didn't know because their legions were stationed elsewhere. So this was during the war. So this was 500 years ago. And this is like his first interaction with Amarantha. And he says he got chained up and pinned to a wall with ash arrows, and they were trying to get Rhys to tell them where the like night court forces were, but he did not yield. Obviously. Do you think it could be a hero in a Sarah J. Maas novel and yield? You do not yield. Amarantha doesn't really care much about Rhys at this point in the story because Rhys is just like a random High Lord son. Like, really is not that important. And she's busy with Jurian at this point. She's dealing with, like, she's trying to track down and kill Jurian. But Rhys, meanwhile, is like plotting a way to kill her because now he's inside kind of her camp because he's being captured and tortured. And he knows he'll likely end up dead, but he thinks it'll be worth it if he can kill if he can kill Amarantha, it'll be worth it to lose his own life in the process. But days before Rhys was going to kill her, she had her final face-off with Jurian. Okay, we're not told Rhys's plan of how he was going to kill her. So I kind of feel like this is likely story Rhys. Sure, you were going to kill her. We don't really know how. Rhys was chained up and forced to watch the battle, and then he was forced to sit there and watch as Amarantha tortured Jurian for days afterwards. Luckily, she was so busy with Jurian's torture that Rhys's father was able to sneak in and grab Rhys and take him out, free him. And Rhys's dad instructed instructed his men to leave the ash bolts in Rhys's wings as punishment for getting caught. So he didn't get to participate in the final battles. Okay. That's kind of mean. My note here says, if I was Feyre, I'd be so annoyed right now. Bestie, you have 5 minutes. Maybe get to the part about the mating bond. I don't need your life story. At this point, her grandparents haven't even been born yet. We're back 6 generations? Probably more than that. 500 years? How many generations would that be? A lot. Because you think a new generation starts every 25 years on average. So it's we're back 20 generations. Rhys, could you get to the part about Feyre? Anyway, Feyre doesn't seem that impatient. I'm impatient. And then he explains the treaty was made and the wall was built. The Night Court had already freed their human slaves because they were bad at keeping secrets, not because slavery is immoral, just so we're clear. And Azriel and Cassian brought rhysand to this cabin to recuperate. So this cabin is over 500 years old, in excellent shape for that. And Feyre just painted all over it. This centuries-old family heirloom cabin. Feyre painted. Okay, perfect. He, really hated Amarantha. Okay? I think that was, the whole point of the story was, how much he hated Amarantha. Girl, we didn't need a secondary explanation on why you hated Amarantha. She was, pretty evil in what we saw. So, you could have just hated her for that. But whatever. When Amarantha comes back, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, Rhys still wanted to kill her, but she didn't even remember him. He was not even something that registered in her memory of the war. But he was planning to kill her, which is why he went to that party under the mountain where Tamlin and everyone got their masks put on, and he was planning to turn her mind to goo, use his mind powers to get in her brain and turn it to goo while she was drunk. But Amarantha had really extensive mental shields, and Rhys was so busy tunneling past them that he didn't check his own drink, and he didn't bring Azriel and Cassian because he didn't want them to see what he was going to do. Okay. They've probably seen worse, so don't be weird. Anyway, he's by himself. His drink gets poisoned, and he can feel his power leaving. And as he feels his power being ripped away, he flung out the last strands to protect Velaris. Amarantha then slaughters half of the Court of Nightmares just to prove she could, and for vengeance for Tamlin's dad. Because Tamlin's dad and Amarantha were actually friends during the First War, and so she doesn't like Rhysand in the Night Court because they were the ones that slaughtered him. And Rhysand decides very quickly that there is absolutely nothing that he would not do to keep his court safe. And that's how he becomes Amarantha's whore. Then she cursed Tamlin, and Rhys spends the next 50 years hating her, even as he slowly gets her to trust him. And even as he forgets what his friends' faces look like, because he's so afraid to think of them, because he doesn't want Amarantha to realize they exist. And so he starts to forget even what his friends' faces look like. He stopped hoping entirely. He just given up that he was ever going to get out of this. But then 3 years ago, he says, I began to have these dreams. At first they were glimpses, as if I were staring through someone else's eyes. Crackling hearth in a dark home, a bale of hay in a barn. Okay, so Rhysand was indeed spying on the Isaac Hale hookups. Just a little, it was an accident. I don't think he saw anything crazy, but he did see that. A warren of rabbits. The images were foggy, like looking through cloudy glass. They were brief, a flash here and there. Every few months, I thought nothing of them, until one of the images was of a hand. This beautiful human hand holding a brush, painting flowers on a table. And that time, I pushed a thought back, of the night sky, of the image that brought me joy when I needed it most. Open night sky, stars and the moon. I didn't know if it was received, but I tried anyway. When she was painting the dresser. Oh. Those dreams, the flashes of that person, that woman. Okay, Rhys, she was at that point a teenage girl. As we learned last time, Feyre was 17 when she painted that dresser. So she was indeed a teenager. a teenage girl. Just a reminder, this book is YA. This man is 500 in like a real way. He's seen wars. He's not like Eddie C., my beloved Edward Cullen, who is 17. Even though he's been around for 100 years, I believe this man is 17. Rhys doesn't... We're not given a supposed age that he's supposed to be, but I would guess at least on his 30s. Okay. Nothing to worry about. I'm not saying anything about, like, kick Rhys out of the book boyfriend club. Obviously, he's still top tier. But it's just, like, sometimes I forget this book is YA, and then I go, it's kind of crazy. Anyway, he said, I treasured them. They were a reminder that there was some peace out there in the world, some light, that there was a place and a person who had enough safety to paint flowers on a table. It's so good. I know you. I walked with you once upon a dream. He explains it went on for years until one day the dreams were substantially clearer, and it's Feyre's nightmare about being chased by the bogey, and Rhys realizes very quickly she's in Prythian, but he doesn't know where, and he starts to like really pay attention to these dreams and really pick through them for clues to where she might be located. And finally, he figures it out because Feyre dreams of the unlit bonfires at Calanmai, and he recognizes the hills of the Spring Court and like the grandeur of the Calanmai celebration there. And so he convinces Amarantha to send him to the Spring Court to spy on Tamlin. And she was like willing to send him because we were getting so close to the end of the like bargain curse situation, and she was starting to get really paranoid about things. So she was happy to send Rhys along. And this moment he arrived in Spring Court, he could smell her. And he used that scent to track Feyre through the celebration. And he says, and there you were. Feyre was surrounded by those like yucky men that were gonna drag her into the forest and attack her. And he just like sees her. And Feyre like thinks back to his first words to her. There you are. I've been looking for you. His first words to me. Not a lie. Not at all. Not a threat to keep the fairies away. Thank you for finding her for me. Ooh, it's so good. Oh my gosh. And Rhys knows the moment that Feyre looks at him that she does not have any idea. The like dream situation, one-sided. She's not seeing Rhys's dreams. And Rhys like sees her and sees how like human and breakable she is, and knows that like Amarantha can never like know about her. Can never find out that like he's even interacted with her, because it would be too dangerous. It would be like too easy for her to be just like ripped away from him. And he doesn't even let himself learn her name because he feels it would be too dangerous. But deep down, even if he didn't know it at the time, he already knew they were mates. And he's like, I think I didn't even allow myself to consider it, because if anyone had found out, if Amarantha had found out, like she would have just done horrific things to you. The like level of torture you would have had to endure under the mountain would have been exponentially worse than what you already had to deal with. And he walks away and he tries to like reframe it for himself and to be like grateful for the gift of seeing her for just once, even though he knows he like can't risk seeing her again. And then he wipes the minds of the men who were being creepy with Feyre, and he brings them back to Amarantha. He doesn't know about Feyre's relationship to Tamlin until she returns to the Spring Court a second time. And he walks in and he's devastated to find Feyre at the dining table with his like worst enemy, clearly smelling like his enemy and like looking at Tamlin like she's in love with him. And he gets scared that Feyre's going to break the curse with Tamlin, and knows that if Feyre breaks the curse, like Amarantha will make sure she is dead. And so he scares Tamlin enough that he hopes that Tamlin will send Feyre away. But he's a little selfish this time. This time he wants to know her name. And he asks it, and Feyre lies. If you remember, she is the name Claire Better. He's like, you know what? As soon as I heard that lie, was like, okay, I don't get to know her name. Like, that's probably for the best. And he like leaves, and he talks about like why he had chosen to like go into her mind that time, and how he wanted to like make sure that Tamlin was like frightened for her, and like how that was so important, but how it was like so hard for him to do that to her, and how as soon as he left he threw up everywhere. He then checked in only once they were ransacking the palace to make sure she was gone, and he didn't know about the fact that Amarantha was sending people for Claire, and he feels really bad about that. He's like, that was my bad, really, that was not cool. He explains that he did wipe Claire's mind so she felt no pain, and just like told her when she needed to scream about that, like she wasn't actually in any real pain, and he was the one who ended her suffering. He's the one who ended up going into her mind and like killing her so she didn't have to endure anymore. And he starts to cry at this point, but he was also relieved at the death of Claire Better, because he thought that would be the end of it, because Amarantha thought that this girl that Tamlin had was dead now. But then Feyre is brought in by the Adder. And Rhys says, I was in the back of the throne room that day. The Adder brought you in, and I have never known such horror, Feyre, as I did when I watched you make that bargain. Irrational, stupid terror. I didn't know you. I didn't even know your name, but I thought of those painters' hands, the flowers I'd seen you create, and how she'd delight in breaking your fingers apart. I had to stand and watch as the Adder and its cronies beat you. I had to watch the disgust and hatred on your face as you looked at me, watched me threaten to shatter Lucian's mind, and then I learned your name. Hearing you say it was like an answer to a question I'd been asking for 500 years. And Rhys is like, he decides that he's going to try everything to help Feyre because she is like their best hope of beating Amarantha, that like perhaps the Cauldron had connected them through these dreams because she was the hope for their people. And he was going to use her to defy Amarantha, spreading seeds of hope like to people who were paying attention, and also use her to get back at Tamlin and keep her alive. Okay? He was like, I'm going to use this girl for a lot of things. But he like knew he had to keep up the charade of like him being this like cruel, mean man the entire time he was under the mountain. The final trial came. And when he heard Feyre's screaming, it broke Rhys and he went for the knife. He like could not stand the thought of just watching her anymore. And he tries to kill Amarantha. And that's when he knows for sure they were mates. Because he knew that if Feyre was going to die, he wanted to die alongside her. And he feels her die. He like feels it in the mating bond. And he thinks to himself, or he says to Feyre, and this beautiful, wonderful thing that had come into my life, this gift from the Cauldron, it was gone. In my desperation, I clung to that bond, not the bargain. The bargain was nothing. The bargain was like a cobweb. But I grabbed the bond between us and I tugged. I willed you to hold on, to stay with me, because if we could get free. And then Rhys explains that he like was like, I would have gone in and mind control with every single one of those High Lords to make sure that they gave you magic. Like there was no question about that. If that was the only way to save you, that's what we were going to do. And Feyre realizes now, like as Rhys recounts his side of the story, that was what she had felt on the other side of the bond. She had felt this clear tug of like home existing on the other side of the bond. And it wasn't the Spring Court. It wasn't Tamlin. It wasn't anything but rhysand. And after that, he had to watch as Tamlin like hugged her and kissed her and held her, but he needed to talk to her once more before he went back to Velaris. He was going to tell her then, but she just looked so sad and tired when they had that conversation out on the balcony at the end of A Court of Thorns and Roses. And he promised himself that he would let her out of the bargain the next time, but he was afraid that if he let her out of the bargain entirely, that Tamlin would like lock her up and make sure that Rhys never saw her again, and like he just like couldn't risk that. But as they're standing out on that balcony together, he feels the bond like fully snap into place. Like now that she has been made and now that she's Fae, it like is so much stronger and like clearer to him now. He like immediately like pieces out because he knows if he would have waited even like a few minutes longer, he would have not been able to control himself and he would have taken Feyre with him. Which might have been better for her in the long term, TBH, but that's okay. When he lands back at the Night Court, Mor is waiting for him, waiting to see him for the first time in 50 years, and his first words to her are, "She's my mate." Ugh. He spends those first 3 months trying to convince himself that Feyre is like better off without him, that like if she can be happy in a marriage to Tamlin, that'll be like a safer place for her and a good place. Like he's fine with letting her go as long as she'll be happier with him. But then he can also feel through the bond how like miserable she is. Like every day she's like throwing up and being like so depressed, and he's like, she's fine, she loves it over there, but like clearly she's having a bad time. She's having such a bad time. On her wedding day, he had planned to get drunk with Cassian, who had no idea why Rhys was so upset. There's no way that Mor didn't let it slip a little to the boys. I think that she told them. Conspiracy theory that I'm actually interested in. I think Mor might have ratted out the fact that Feyre was Rhysand's mate ages ago. Like pretty quickly after she found out. You know, she is truth, so... Anyway, so his plan is to go get like rip-roaring drunk and to just like pretend he doesn't know what's happening on Feyre's wedding day. But instead, he hears her begging for someone to save her through the bond, like begging and pleading. And he zaps right over to the wedding. And it's the first time he's seen her since Under the Mountain, and she looks so thin and pale. She looks worse than she did Under the Mountain, just in a prettier dress. Rhys is like literally ready to kill Tamlin, but he doesn't. So respectful, so responsible. He takes her back, and he's like, it was so miserable to take you for a week, to watch you like start to get better for over the week and then send you back to him, and you'd come back to me half starved and miserable again. Like, it was horrific. But he was like, I'm willing to live with it. Like, if this is what she wants, this is what she can have. I don't know. It seems like there may be some other options in the middle here, but whatever. And he's like, but like, I could work with it until the day Tamlin locked Feyre up. And Rhys says, if Tamlin had been there that day, I would have killed him. And then the soup is boiling. It's ready. Is Feyre going to give him the soup? Feyre puts it into a bowl. Feyre says to Rhys, you love me? And Rhys just nods. And Feyre says, then eat. Rhysand eats up his whole bowl of soup, obviously. And Rhys is like, are you going to say anything? Do you have anything to add to this? And Feyre says, I was going to tell you what I decided the moment I saw you on the threshold. And Rhys says, and now? And Feyre says, and now I want you to know, Rhysand, that I love you. I want you to know that I am broken and healing, but every piece of my heart belongs to you. And I am honored to be your mate. I love you. And I'd endure every second of it over again so I could find you. And if war comes, we'll face it together. I won't let them take me from you. And I won't let them take you from me either. Tongue twister. And then they're hugging and they're both crying and he kisses her, and it's the kind of like soft, gentle kiss that might have been their first kiss if they had lived in a different world. And then things get spicy. Rhys does get to fulfill his wish from the inn. Great news for him. They use the paint supplies in ways that feel like, you know, maybe not great choices. I don't think you're supposed to put the paint there, but go off. Then we cut to a little later, they're laying in bed together, and Rhys says to Feyre, I think I fell in love with you the moment I realized you were cleaving those bones to make a trap for the Middengar worm. Or maybe the moment you flipped me off for mocking you. It reminded me so much of Cassian. For the first time in decades, I wanted to laugh. And Feyre's kind of offended at this. She says, you fell in love with me because I reminded you of your friend? Whoa. Cassian's not just his friend. That's one of his best bros. Please be respectful of his culture. His love for his bros is one of his deepest loves. So him saying that he loves you like one of his bros, that's important, Feyre. Rhys says in response, he doesn't say that part, like, excuse me, I love my bros so much. Don't be rude. Rhys says, I fell in love with you because you were one of us, because you weren't afraid of me, and you decided to end your spectacular victory by throwing that piece of bone at Amarantha like a javelin. I felt Cassian's spirit beside me in that moment, and could have sworn I heard him say, if you don't marry her, you stupid prick, I will. Then Rhys and Feyre take a bath together to wash off all the paint they put in inappropriate places, and Feyre talks about how she knew she was in love with Rhys on Starfall. She had been falling in love with him for a while, but like that was the first time she had allowed herself to sort of admit it, but she felt really scared of that reality. And Rhys is like, that's like totally reasonable given like your history and the fact that like I'm a scary guy to be with. And Feyre's like, no, it like isn't reasonable because you are not Tamlin, and I was never afraid of the consequences of being with you. Even if every assassin in the world hunts us, it will be worth it. You are worth it. I miss assassins. Every time they talk about an assassin, I'm like, I wish we had a fun assassin in this book. I miss her. I'm going into like real serious like Selena Sartheltian withdrawals. And then they talk about what they should do next. And Rhys assumes that he's talking about like about their mating bond. And he's like, okay, so we have a couple options. So we can go to a priestess and have the bond like officially validated. She'll be a cool priestess, not like Ianthe. We can have a big ceremony if you want, or we can have something really chill, or we can have nothing at all. We could also have the priestess also marry us. We could be like husband and wife as well as mated, but like totally an extra add-on, or we can just chill and wait. Like we are mated whether like the priestess says so or not. So like if you want to like just like hang out and wait for it to get like officially approved, totally fine with me as well. And Feyre was like, I actually meant about like the war situation, but it's nice to know that you'll do whatever I want. And Rhys says, they like chat a little bit more, and then Rhys says, you are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I thought that the first moment I saw you at Calanmai, which is good because you thought I was the most beautiful male you'd ever seen, so it makes us even. And then Rhys is like, oh, the queens did send word. They'll return in 3 days to like let us know about the Book of Breathings. And Feyre was like, you waited to tell me this till now? And Rhys is like, okay, well, we were a little busy. Didn't seem urgent. They aren't coming tomorrow. It's in 3 days. We have time. And Feyre is just thinking about how much life and joy she has ahead of her. And she literally starts to like glow with it. It's very sweet. They have like a conversation around how Rhys is going to have to like have her learn how to control that because he plans to make her very, very happy for the rest of her life. Okay, cute. They're very, very busy all night, and Rhys explains it is like very typical for the mating bond to cause this sort of like frenzy. And then he talks about how this is like some, typical territorial female bullshit, as Miss Aileen Galathinius would call it. They talk about potential pregnancy, and Feyre explains that she's off the birth control tonic currently because she was not actively sleeping with anyone. And Rhys is like, do you want to start taking it again? It would essentially like work as like a plan B and counteract everything they kind of did and make sure she's like not going to get pregnant from this evening's activities if she started taking it again right now. And Feyre says, well, if I'm the High Lord's mate, am I expected to bear your offspring? So like maybe it makes more sense for me to like be able to get pregnant whenever. And Rhys is like, no, you don't have to have kids unless you want to. And like right now with Hybern, it like feels really risky. And honestly, it like really stresses me out to think of you even being pregnant because it would like put you in even more danger than you're currently in. And I have so many enemies and it just kind of like stresses me out. So like in the current moment, I like ideally wouldn't actually want you to be pregnant right now, but like we can definitely come back to this conversation. And Feyre's like, okay, for sure. I'll start taking it today once we get back. I would be happy beyond reason though, if you one day did honor me with children, to share that with you. This next part, I'm going to have Miss Sarah J. Maas herself come on in. I don't actually have her. What if I did? What if Sarah just like has been here for the last 45 minutes and she just like walks in? Hi guys. She's like just out of frame this whole time. No, she's going to listen to us. She's going to put on her listening ears. I need her to listen to this next part. Sarah, are you listening? Feyre says, I want to live with you first. I want to see things and have adventures. I want to learn what it is to be immortal, to be your mate, to be a part of your family. I want to be ready for them. And then selfishly, I want to have you all to myself for a while. Okay? Feyre doesn't want to get pregnant right now. She's immortal. She's going to live for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. She's currently 20 years old. She doesn't currently want to get pregnant. Okay, Sarah, that's all I needed you to listen to. You can go. Rhys says, you take all the time you need. And if I get you all to myself for the rest of eternity, I won't mind that at all. Aww. That's the end of the famous chapter 55. And you might be thinking to yourself, surely, Nichelle, this is where you stopped caring about Tamlin, right? This is where you said, oh, Tamlin, we've learned, is a bad guy who murdered Rhys's mom and sister. He trapped Feyre in a house. He's been like the most annoying. Feyre is mated to rhysand and is like so happily with him. Surely you're not still worried about Tamlin. Yeah, unfortunately I am. Like I was on board with the rhysand Feyre situation, but I was still like, wow, Feyre really left him in a bind. And like he's probably doing so poorly. Things are so sad for him. I feel so bad for him. I'm still worried about him. And people are like, it's crazy to me that this isn't your favorite book. That's why. Because I read it incorrectly. You know? Like, sometimes people can read a book wrong. And I read this book incorrectly. I was wrong. I did a bad job. We're still at the part where it is in this book. I do dump Tamlin mentally dump Tamlin in this book. We're just not there yet. Truly embarrassing for me. Okay. Rhys winnows them back to the Illyrian war camp, and Cassian is there waiting for them, and Cassian says, well, it's about time. And then Rhys snarls at Cassian. Feyre's like, oh, what the heck? And Cassian, like, continues to poke and kind of, like, make jokes about, like, what Rhys and Feyre were up to. He's just, like, teasing, and then the boys start, like, physically fighting each other. They're, like, literally punching each other on the head. But, like, Rhys isn't using his magic. Cassian essentially like riled Rhys up so Rhys could let out a little steam. And then Mor comes out and is like, they'll be at it for a while. And she says, welcome to the family, Feyre. The boys fight for like an hour, and Cassian and Mor leave the house. They're like, oh, we actually have to go ahead to Velaris to give Feyre and Rhys some time because they have to hook up again. Then they head home to Velaris, and back at the House of Wind, Mor, Azriel, Amren, Cassian are waiting in the dining room. And they all, when they come in, they rise and they bow to Feyre. And Amren says, we will serve and protect. And Feyre says, thank you, but I would rather you were my friends before the serving and protecting. And Mor says, we are, but we will also serve and protect. And Amren comments on the fact that Feyre had to save Rhys's butt in the forest, and they kind of like chat about the whole like surreal situation, and Amren kind of like mocks Rhys a little bit for having to have his mate save his booty. And then shortly after dinner, they head to the Mortallands to go meet up with the Queenies. Only the Golden Queen and the Old Queen come this time. Feyre is in the same outfit as last time, but this time Rhys and Feyre are coming in like holding hands. Like they're a unit. They're a couple now, guys. They're Facebook official. Cassian, Azriel, Aline, and Nesta are standing on the edge of the room. Again, kind of like off to the side, but still like close by. And Rhys is again says, we appreciate you taking the time to see us. And Oldie says, the old one says, after being so gravely insulted last time, and she glares at Nesta, and Nesta just glares right on back. She's like, I said what I said, and I meant it. I'm not taking it back. We debated whether we should return, and as you can see, 3 of us found the insults unforgivable. And Feyre's like, okay, well, if those are the worst insults you ever come across, I'd say you're in for quite a shock when war comes. Like, get over yourself. And then the gold queen says, so he won your heart after all, Cursebreaker. And Feyre is like, I do not think it was mere coincidence that the Cauldron let us find each other on the eve of a war returning between our 2 peoples. And the Golden Queen says, our peoples? Our peoples don't invoke a cauldron or have magic. They are your people, and then there are ours. You are no better than the children of the blessed. Ew. And then the old one is like, okay, you said you had proof for us. Let's see it. And then Feyre's like, seriously though, like, is my love for the High Lord not proof enough of our good intentions? There's an iron engagement ring on my sister's finger, and yet she stands with us. And the gold one says, okay, all that proves is that your sister's kind of an idiot. She's a dummy. To be engaged to a Fae-hating man and risk the match with associating with you is stupid. Not a real, like, sign of character. And Nesta is like, hey, you don't talk about Elaine like that. Do not judge what you know nothing about. And the gold one says, the Viper speaks again. Surely the wise move would have been to have her sit this meeting out. And Feyre says, this is her house, and she risks a lot by allowing us to meet here. She has a right to hear what is spoken in these meetings and to stand in as a representative of the people of this lands. They both do. And the old one says, okay, prove us wrong. It's time for the Veritas orb. Feyre's feeling real yucky. She, like, really hates the fact that they're having to, like, essentially give up Velaris, or expose Velaris in this way in order to gain the queen's trust. And Rhys can feel that from her, and he reaches down the bond and says to her, war is sacrifice. If we do not gamble Velaris, we risk losing Prythian, and more. And then Moore kind of explains what the orb is, and then says, truth is deadly, truth is freedom, truth can break and mend and bind. The Veritas holds in it the truth of the world. I am the Morrigan. You know I speak truth. Okay. Can Moore lie? I don't know. I don't know. Then they show the Queenies Velaris as Rhys kind of explains what it is. Rhys essentially did like a drone shot of the city. He like flew from above and then he came down and like flew through the city streets. Drone shot. Can you imagine? I am picturing him holding the Veritas orb flying around and the people just watching him being like, what is he doing? There's the High Lord. He's being kind of weird because I think that's how he had to capture it. And he explains how he has to let himself be viewed as like an evil man and let all of these other people be evil so he can have a cutie little city. And the old one is like, okay, your trust is appreciated. We'll consider it. And Moore's like, okay, consider what? Like, yes or no? We really don't have time for you to continue to deliberate and like stall this decision. Every day lost is another day that Hybern gets closer to shattering the wall. And the old queen says, we need to discuss it with the others and we'll tell you what we decide. And Rhys says, you need this alliance as much as we do. And the old queen says, did you think we would be moved by your letter, your plea? And then she like calls one of the guards over and she plucks the letter from his jacket and reads it. I write to you not as a high lord, but as a male in love with a woman who was once human. I write to you to beg you to act quickly, to save her people, to help save my own. I write to you so one day we might know true peace, so I might one day be able to live in a world where the woman I love can visit her family without fear of hatred or reprisal. A better world. This letter is so good. So this letter was sent before, obviously, Feyre accepted the mating bond, which makes it sweeter. But also the fact that he ends with a better world. You know, I'm a sucker for a better world line. What do we fight for? A better world. Feyre likes it too. She like squeezes his hand. And the old one is like, okay, well, we still don't totally 100% believe you because like, what if she's not actually the Morrigan? Ever think about that? What if you tricked us to make us think that she's the Morrigan, but she's not actually the Morrigan? How are we to know? And Rhys is like, come on, guys, this is stupid. And then Nesta struts over and she says, give them the book. And the queens just stare at her. And Nesta repeats again. Did she stutter the first time? I don't think she did, but she repeats it again. Give them the book. And the old queen says, no. And Nesta says, there are innocent people here. If you will not risk your necks against the forces that threaten us, then grant those people a fighting chance. Give my sister the book. And the old Queen says, an evacuation might be possible. And Nesta says, no. You'd need 10,000 ships. You would need an entire armada. I've calculated the numbers, and you are readying for a war. You will not send your ships to us. We are stranded here. I love the idea of Nesta being in the back, doing some calculations, running the numbers, and being like, essentially trying to figure out a plan to figure out how she could save these people. Like, Nesta is over here working to figure out how she can save the human people. Because otherwise, how would she know those numbers? It's not like she was like, not the calculations would be like super difficult, but like that requires her like planning, her thinking about like, how can we save these people? Nesta is good. And if you don't like Nesta, you can meet me out back. I'll literally fist fight you. Anyway, the old queen says, maybe one of those winged guys can just carry you guys across the sea. And Cassian surely would, but they can't carry everyone. And then Nesta says, please do not leave us to face this alone. And Nesta's eyes are literally lined with tears, but she is just glaring at the queens. And then Cassian walks over to her and he says to Nesta, 500 years ago, I fought on battlefields not far from this house. I fought beside humans and fairy alike. Bled beside them. I will stand on that battlefield again, Nesta Archeron, to protect this house, your people. I can think of no better way to end my existence than to defend those who need it most. And then he reaches over and he wipes the tears from Nesta's face. And she did not flinch away. Okay. I love the Nesta Cassian romance. Is it my favorite romance in the book? No, I think Feyre and Rhys is still my favorite, but like Nesta and Cassian is pretty dang good. And Feyre looks over at Mor. Why? Don't look at her. She has nothing to do with this. Look away from Mor. Leave her out of this. And Mor is just looking over at Nesta and Cassian with awe. She like sees something in them. And Mor says to the queens, name your price. And the Golden Queen says, we have all the riches we need. We'll return to our palace and deliberate with our sisters now. And Mor's like, you guys are just going to say no. And the Golden Queen says, probably goodbye. And they leave. But when they get up, Rhys's eyes are locked. Like when they get up and winnow away. They don't like, they're gone. They're like, poof, gone. Rhys is looking down where the Golden Queen was sitting. And underneath her chair, hidden by her skirts, is a box. Rhys had known it the whole time. He had like somehow like felt it, sensed it, and he had been trying to hurry that meeting along. She'd like reached down to grab a handkerchief at some point and had slipped the box under there. And it's the second half of the Book of Breathings, and it sings to Feyre. Life and death and rebirth, sun and moon and dark, rot and bloom and bones. Hello, sweet thing. Hello, lady of night, princess of decay. Hello, fanged beast and trembling fawn. Love me, touch me, sing me. And on top is a note from the Golden Queen. I read your letter about the women you loved. I believe you, and I believe in peace. I believe in a better world. If anyone asks, you stole this during the meeting. Do not trust the others. The sixth queen was not ill. Ooh, spooky. And Rhys then turns to Elaine and Nesta and is like, hey guys, so war is definitely coming. Like I offer you a choice. We can like take you back to Prythian. We can take you back to the Night Court to Velaris and make sure you are safe there. But if you want to stay behind in your home, I will make sure that we have soldiers stationed outside that will be out of sight, but like we'll keep you guys safe. And Nesta says, Elaine, whatever you want to do. And Elaine is like, I can't. Like, she's to be married. She's engaged. She's in love with this boy. And Rhys says, okay, that's totally fine. My sentries will be here and remain out of sight. But if you change your mind twice a day, once at noon and once at midnight, there will be one man who will like appear in this room. And they can just be like, we would like to leave now. And they'll take you home. And he says to them, my house is your home. Its doors are always open to you. And then Nesta says to Feyre, that is why you painted stars on your drawer. I think that's so sweet. Just like a little comment, a little note of like notice. But like Nesta and Feyre have always like seen each other. They like see each other in a way that I don't think many other people do. So they leave Elaine and Nesta and they head back to Velaris to make sure the Book of Breathings is safe. So they like get out of there as quick as they can just to make sure the queens don't realize and come back and try to take it back. Immediately they give the book to Amren so she can try to like put it together with the first half and try to crack the code. 2 days later, she still hasn't cracked it. Mor is headed back to the Court of Nightmares to return the Veritas Orb, and it becomes clear that even if they nullify the Cauldron, there will be war. And Rhys is like in preparations to like get everyone ready for battle. So he's been like out most of the time going to like the Illyrian war camps and things to like ready people There have been no word from Feyre's sisters and no word from the queens. Cassian and Azriel have been spending a lot of time with Feyre since Rhys and Mor have been out of town, and she knows that they're hanging out for company, but she also knows that they're there to like look after her. And she writes a letter to Rhys and is like, hey, like, how do I let the boys know that like I don't need their protection? And Rhys says, you don't. You set boundaries if they cross the line, but you are their friend and my mate. They will protect you on instinct. If you kick them out of the house, they will just sit on the roof. And then they flirt some in their letters too. They have, you know, multi-purpose letters. The next day, her and Cassian go to a symphony in an outdoor amphitheater and are walking home from that. Feyre has plans to like stop at the market and pick up some presents for her sisters. And she's like talking to Cassian as they walk. And she says to him, it meant a great deal to me what you promised my sister the other day. And Cassian's like, well, I'd do that for anyone. And Feyre says, it meant a lot to her too. Nesta is different from most people. She comes across as rigid and vicious, but I think it's a wall, a shield against feeling. I think Nesta feels everything, sees too much, sees and feels it all, and she burns with it. Keeping that wall up helps her from becoming overwhelmed, from caring too greatly. And Cassian's like, that doesn't seem true. She barely seems to care about anyone other than Elaine. This is so mean. I'm glad Nesta isn't hearing this. Oh my gosh. And Feyre says, she will never be like Mor. She will never love freely and gift it to everyone who crosses her path. But the few she does care for, I think Nesta would shred the world apart for them, shred herself apart for them. She will never forget, Cassian, that you offered to defend Elaine, defend her people. As long as she lives, she will remember this kindness. And Cassian's like, why are you telling me this? And Feyre says, I thought that you should know. For whenever you see her again and she pisses you off, which I'm certain will happen, but know that deep down she is grateful and perhaps does not possess the ability to say so. Yet the feeling, the heart is there. And as they're having this nice moment, something in the air shifts and Cassian like pushes a button on his bracelet. On his siphons, and his full like armor snaps into place. They can see groups of something flying for the city from the sea, and like it can't be Illyrians because none of the Illyrians know where they're at. And Cassian wants to take Feyre home, but she's like ready to fight. She's like, I'm gonna use my ice power and freeze all their wings. She's plotting and scheming. Very quickly they realize that they're not regular fairies, they're like the Adder. TBH, they're kind of giving Ilkin vibes. If you were a Throne of Glass girly, you know the Ilkin. Cassian's holding a shield. There's like a shield obviously around Velaris, and Cassian's trying to like shoot them down, but like the shield isn't really holding against them. And as one like breaks through, he uses his body to like shield Feyre. He like puts his wings out around her and like covers Feyre's body with his own. And then the Golden Queen's body is chucked onto one of the lampposts on this bridge that they're standing on, and her eyes are plucked out, but she's like still alive. And the Adder announces as he like flies over, regards of the mortal queen and Jurian, and then heads for the theater district. And Cassian follows the Adder, instructing Feyre again to like run home now because the townhouse is like warded significantly more heavily because it's a smaller space, so it's easier to like more substantially protect. And so his instructions are to like get home to get her safe. But the shield around Velaris is not holding, and more holes are getting punched through it, and more like of these creatures are coming through. Feyre tries to get to the Golden Queen to like give her some of her blood, that like Dawn court magic blood, but it's too late, and she watches as the Golden Queen dies. Feyre starts running back to the townhouse because she knows she only has minutes, and she plans to bring as many people inside as she can to use the house's wards to like keep them all safe. And she's racing home thinking about how the queens had betrayed them, and the king had used the cauldron to break the wards of this place that had been unbreached for hundreds of years. She can see both Cassian and Azriel in the skies now, like shooting people down. She can see the blue and red light coming from both of them, but people are dying all over the place. And it becomes clear that these men haven't been sent here to like sack the city or take it over, but have been sent to just like decimate it, to level it, to bring it to the ground. And then Amren's on the other side of the city, just pointing at people to kill them. Feyre sees the artist quarter then. The rainbow is unguarded in it. Feyre hears a scream, and she knows she needs to protect it because these are her people, her home. And we like are told the story of in the rainbow, there's this woman who is like an owner of a gallery or something, and she is got like a pipe in her hand, and she's trying to like fight off these like creatures, and they're just like laughing because like clearly she is not equipped to fight them. She's like a random woman with a pipe, but like she is trying to protect her home, and Feyre goes to like help her. She turns into mist and smoke and just like starts slicing people up. She's running on the water on the Sidra, and then she turns the water into wolves that attack the soldiers. That's so fun. And then the water wolves become falcons and eagles, and she soaks the people in the sky that are flying, and they are at first like, why did you just get us wet? Like, what a weird strategy. But then she freezes that water so cold that the people like shatter as they hit the cobblestones. And then Feyre spots the Adder turning to flee, and Feyre's like, I'm not going to let the adder go back to the King of Hybern after he led this. And Rhys is shouting down the bond, "Where are you?" And Feyre just says back to him, "I'm exactly where I need to be." And then she winnows into the sky to fight the adder. Feyre's like hunting down the adder, and Rhys is yelling at her through the bond, but he's just like worried about her. And Feyre is like, this is distracting. So she like puts up her wall like very firmly so Rhys can't talk to her. And like, hey Feyre, I understand you don't want to be distracted, but like this is kind of mean. This is like a life or death situation. It would be nice if Rhys could know you're still alive. Like I feel like that would be kind to him, but whatever. She can see in the darkness. She can see like Rhys has arrived in the city, and she can see the darkness like swallowing parts of the city and just killing buckets of these bad guys. And she's like, there's my mate. Hi. Then she finds the adder, and she lights herself on fire and wraps herself around the adder, and they start to fall from the sky. And darkness is coming closer, but Feyre is like, not yet. Like, don't get over here, Rhys. I want to kill the adder. And she stabs him with a dagger in the heart, and she says, this is for Rhys. And then she stabs him again, and then she says, this is for Claire. And then she stabs him a final time as they near the cobblestones, and she said, this is for me. I'll see you in hell. And then she winnows away so she doesn't splat. And then Rhys arrives, and no one in his darkness like cloaks this part of the city, but like the people of Velaris don't scream at his darkness. This darkness is like safety. It's not something to be scared of. And he kisses her. He like holds her and he kisses her, and he's like, they like are together and they are both safe. And he says to her, Feyre, Cursebreaker, the defender of the rainbow. And one thing Sarah J. Maas is gonna do is give our heroine a few nicknames. She's not gonna walk out of here with just one or two nicknames. She's gonna have a couple. You want a handful. If you're a Sarah J. Maas heroine, you want a handful of nicknames. So we just got another one for her. Feyre just like hugs him and cries as the city that has only seen peace for centuries is now drenched in blood. Okay. We're pausing. You're not pausing. The video, as you can probably tell, keeps going. Keeps going right along the bottom there. But I'm pausing because this is actually all I have time for today. Okay. I'll see you tomorrow. You'll see me. No, we have an outfit change because it's a brand new day. It's a brand new day as I'm filming this, and I did find this t-shirt in my drawer and say, oh my gosh, I have to wear this because it says Darlin, as in Feyre Darlin. Cute, fun. Obviously needed to wear that for the conclusion of A Court of Mist and Fury. We're post-attack on the city. It is hours later. It's like the middle of the night now. I think we're told it's like 2:00 in the morning. Everyone's returned home. They're covered in dirt and blood, and they're just like exhausted. They've rebuilt the wards. Like the wards are back up, and they have helped with whatever they could. Feyre spent the evening at the Rainbow helping tend to their wounded and helping them count their dead and kind of beginning repairs, while rhysand was like busy repairing the wards. We learned a little bit more about Amren and how she was just like pointing at people and knocking them from the sky, and essentially she was getting in their minds and either convincing them that they were much higher above the city than they were, and so they were slamming themselves into the ground thinking that they had like a lot more air before they hit the ground, or for the particularly meanies, she was going into their brains and turning their own nightmares against them until they like died of fear. Okay, Amren, we love that for you. And they're like, okay, we're done for the night. And Cassian says, Velaris might be secure, but for how long, now that Hybern knows about it? How long until the other courts start sniffing around? Feyre's like, yeah. And also, like, if all of us go to Hybern to go pick up the Cauldron, who's going to be left to defend the city? And Amren says, I'm going to stay here and defend the city. Really, like, we have two choices. Like, Rhys can stay behind and defend the city, or Amren can. They're the only ones with enough power to, like, kind of maintain the wards and take down anyone who would attempt to cross them. And Amren's like, also we'll be more prepared next time because we like know that the city is known, and so we'll ready our forces. Should they have done that before? Yeah, probably. If you're going to reveal information to the mortal queens who you don't like know really the intentions of, it does seem like the smart move would have been to prepare defenses probably before you told them. Just saying. And then Mora's like, okay, so what do we do right now? And Amren says, we sleep, we eat. And then Azriel adds on, and then we retaliate. That night, rhysand doesn't come up to bed, and so Feyre follows the bond between them to find him, and he's up on the roof. Rhys is just like looking over the city, and there's so many fewer lights out there than there usually is. And Feyre is like, this wasn't your fault. And Rhys is like, I mean, like, it sort of is. I like sort of told him about the city. Like, I handed it over to him before she can like kind of assure him that it wasn't his fault. He's also like, you shielded against me completely. Like, I couldn't get through to you at all. I could not find a single way in. And Feyre's like, I'm sorry. And Rhys is like, no, it's like really impressive. Like, it's impressive that you were able to do that. But also, like, you could have been killed. And I didn't know it was happening. So both and Feyre's like, are you going to scold me for it? And Rhys is like, no, how could I scold you for defending my people? I don't deserve you. And Feyre says, we deserve each other. Me and Rhys. And we deserve to be happy. The next afternoon, Amren is finally able to crack the code between the two halves of the Book of Breathings. And she's talking to Feyre specifically, and she's like, okay, here's what's going to need to happen. In order to nullify the cauldron, you need to have a hand on the cauldron and a hand on the book, and then speak these words. And she has them written out for Feyre. And Mor's like, so what would happen if we put the two halves of the book together? And Amren says, we're not going to do that. Don't do that. And Feyre can hear both halves singing. They're opposites of each other, good and evil, she says, madness, dark and light and chaos. And they're like, hey girlie, put us together. And Rhys is like, yeah, so if we put the book together, it'll be this massive implosion of power essentially, and it'll be a beacon calling every nasty thing in the world towards us. So we're actually not going to do that. And Mor's like, cool. And then Cassian comes in, and Cassian starts to kind of discuss their plan for going into Hybern and what they're going to do. And he says, we move in now. Since you can't winnow without being tracked, Mor and Azriel will winnow us all in. Feyre's going to break the cauldron, and then we're going to get out. We'll be there and gone before anyone notices, and the king of Hybern will just have a new piece of cookware because the cauldron will be rendered useless in terms of magic. And Feyre's like, it could be anywhere in his castle. We don't know where it is. And Cassian's like, oh, we know where it is. And then Azriel explains they know it's on the lowest level of the castle through some of their spying and reconnaissance work, and they also have a plan for the entrances and exits they need to use to get in there and get out of there very quickly. And Mor is so the king of Hybern would probably notice Rhys's presence the moment he arrives, and if Feyre needs a couple minutes to nullify the cauldron, it does not make sense to bring Rhys in. That adds another level of risk, another variable that we really can't tolerate. And Cassian is the best thing to do would be to have Rhys stay back on the coast, which Cassian knows Rhys isn't going to love this, and Rhys doesn't. Azriel is it's a good plan. The king doesn't know our sense. We'll wreck the cauldron and vanish before he notices. We'll be able to slip in unnoticed. And Rhys is are you asking me to stay outside while my mate goes into my enemy's stronghold? And Azriel's yeah, we are. And he says, if Feyre can't nullify the cauldron quickly or easily, we'll steal it. Either way, Feyre calls out to you through the bond when we're done, and you and Mor will come in and then winnow us out. They won't be able to track you fast enough if you only come to retrieve us. And Rhys is and Feyre kind of braces for him to be no. But he doesn't. He says, if you want to go, then you go, Feyre. You might be my mate, but you remain your own person. You decide your fate, your choices, not me. You chose yesterday. You choose every day, forever. Okay. Sometimes Rhys leans a little too hard into the you are the captain of your own destiny. Because yeah, she is, but you can still have preferences for your partner and the choices they make. I feel it wouldn't be insane for him to be I don't love this, but it's up to you. I think he's just being a little extra. To me, Rhys sometimes reads a little a pick-me. I don't think we see boys being pick-me's quite as often as girls, but Rhys likes to be I'm not like other boys. I'm not like other boysing a little too close to the sun. Calm down. It's just a little too much. Dude, calm down. You could be Feyre gets to decide. You don't need to be it's your choice every day, forever. He does love some drama. He would have been a theater kid. Oh no. I fear that's true. That night, Feyre's heading up to bed, and she's not sure which room to use. They've been going to her bed every night, but her and Tamlin had separate bedrooms, and she's not sure if that's the typical custom, if they're going to maintain separate bedrooms, or if they're going to pick a primary bedroom. And Rhys I don't know, I feel reads it down to the bond or just sees her acting confused, but he says to her, we can use your room if you like, but either your room or mine, but we're sharing one room from now on. Just tell me where I should move my clothes, or yours, if that's all right with you. And Feyre's don't you want your own space? And Rhys is no, unless you want your own space. I need you protecting me from our enemies with your water wolves. I need you with me. And then Feyre just says your bed is bigger. And so they head up to his room. And by the time they get up there, Rhys has already magicked all of her clothes into his bedroom with a second armoire. And then he walks over to one of the drawers, and he pulls out a ring box and hands it over to Feyre with his mother's ring in it. That is the one she stole from the Weaver. And he explains to her, my mother gave me that ring to remind me that she was always with me, even during the worst of my training. And when I reached my majority, she took it away. It was an heirloom of her family. Had been handed down from female to female over many, many years. My sister wasn't born yet, so she wouldn't have known to give it to her, but My mother gave it to the weaver, and then she told me that if I were to marry or to mate, then the female would either have to be smart or strong enough to get it back. And if the female wasn't either of those things, then she wouldn't survive the marriage. I promised my mother that any potential bride or mate would have the test. And so it sat there for centuries. And Feyre's like, you said this was something of value. You like made me go in there and steal it, and you were like, this is very important, very valuable. And Rhys is like, yeah, it is to me and my family. Obviously, I just told you it has a lot of meaning. And then Rhys explains that, like, yes, the trip to the Weaver was to like test her magic and to like give her kind of like a practice run before they went to summer court, but like was also to get her wedding ring. And Feyre's like, Feyre, like, she's like annoyed sort of, but like not really. It's like a playful sort of annoyance at Rhys's schemies. Okay, sometimes a little lie, a little scheme is just fun for everyone. And Feyre asks him, do you want me to wear it? And Rhys says, if you want to. Obviously, he wants you to wear it. Why do you think he gave it to you? So you could look at it and then throw it out the window? Dumb girl. And then Feyre says, when we go to Hybern, let's say things go badly, will anyone be able to tell that we are Maedad? Could they use that against you? And Rhys says, if they see us together and scent us, yes, like they'll be able to smell it on us. And then Feyre says, okay, well, if I show up alone and wearing this like wedding ring from the night court, they'll know even without us being together. And Rhys just like snarls at the idea of that. And Feyre's like, okay, so here's what we're going to do. After we nullify the cauldron, I want to do it all. Get the bond declared, get married, throw a stupid party, and invite everyone in Velaris, all of it. And Rhys is like, actually, what if I wanted to go one step beyond all of that? And Feyre says, I'm listening. Okay. They're up to something. Rhys has a scheme, and this time he's invited his wife to participate in the scheme. We're not invited to participate yet, but she's invited. The next day, it's time to head to Hybern. Feyre is all dressed in blades and armor with the two halves of the Book of Breathings in like two separate pockets, so they're not gonna accidentally stick themselves together. And Amren is like giving them a warning. She's like, Rhys, the king of Hybern is old, very old. Do not linger. And Rhys is like, we'll be in and out before you even miss us. Guard Velaris well. And then Amren says, the cauldron makes the book seem harmless. If the spell fails or you cannot move it, then leave. Fly well. To Feyre. That's kind of her wording and like good luck message to Feyre, essentially. Feyre says goodbye to Rhys, who is winnowing with Azriel in Cassian, and Feyre is going to winnow with Mor. And Cassian just turns to Rhys and he says, before they like leave, he says, with my life, High Lord, I will protect her with my life. And Azriel chimes in, with both of our lives. And then Mor just says to Rhys, I know my orders. And Feyre hasn't been told these orders for Mor because Rhys will literally never reveal all of his schemes. He cannot. It's in his blood and in his heart and in his soul. He has a little nugget of Aelin Galathynius in his heart, and that little nugget of Aelin Galathynius cannot reveal all of his schemes and plans. It would break him. It would shatter him. He's got to have some secrets. Leave him alone. So she winnows with Mor, and then as they fly, which this, like, honestly, it doesn't make sense to have all the flying boys winnow together, and then Mor and the non-flying girl winnow together. Like, it would have made more sense to have Mor winnow with Rhys and Cassian, and to have Azriel winnow with Feyre, because Mor and Feyre just like winnow into the middle of the air, and then Mor just like drops Feyre, and like Azriel has to come catch her. And then Mor like winnows herself to shore. Like, why didn't she winnow with the man who can already fly? This seems like an unnecessary risk. Whatever. I'm not in charge of them. Maybe there was a reason. Or Cassian catches her, not Azriel. And then they can see Hybern, like the island, looming on the horizon. And Feyre says it felt old, as if there was a spider that had been waiting in its web for a long, long time. Our ears always perk up in a Sarah J. Maas novel if something is described as a spider. They timed their arrival for the guards, the change of the guards. So there's no one really out there right now. And Cassian like points out a door that's like on the edge of the island that like leads them into the palace where they're going to meet Mor. And Mor's not going to be able to winnow inside because there probably will be too many wards. So they're going to walk in. And the book starts to like figure out where it is. And the book starts to call. Home, take me home. Country roads. And Feyre can feel the power of the cauldron. She's like, it's kind of silly that we spent so long trying to figure out where the cauldron was. Because like the moment she's on the island, she's like, oh, the cauldron is like calling to me. I could like follow it with my eyes closed. Azriel goes to this little door first and then returns with a bloody knife, and he says, guards are down, let's go. Feyre is tugged through the palace towards the cauldron. Cassian and Azriel killing guards left and right, and Feyre doesn't feel bad about this because these are the same men who had like tracked down Rhys and tried to hurt him, and also the same men that had attacked Velaris. She's like, you guys are all haters, every last one of you. I don't care if you die. Moore is always standing right by Feyre. Like they stay like right next to each other, and Feyre realizes that Moore's like orders, the ones that Feyre doesn't know about, are almost certainly to get Feyre out no matter the cost. Like if something were to happen to Azriel and Cassian, Moore's to get Feyre out. They reach the dungeon and it's completely empty. And they kind of like walk through the dungeon to this other room in this like dank basement area of the palace. And they find it's an empty room, round room with like a dais in the center. And at the center of that is the cauldron, which is this like bathtub sized thing, we're told. Feyre senses it immediately. Like she can tell, she can feel it. And she says, the cauldron was absence and presence, darkness and whatever the darkness had come from, but not life, not joy or light or hope. And it's sitting on its legs. There's these like 3 legs at the base of the cauldron that are holding it up that have been like clearly reattached from all the temples that they had been stolen from. And Moore's like, okay, hurry. We only have a few minutes. And Feyre like goes to approach the cauldron, but Azriel holds out his arm and says like, stop, listen. And Feyre starts to here's the cauldron, and it's like throbbing in the middle of the room like a heartbeat. They can like feel and hear literally the pulse of magic coming out of it. And Feyre approaches the cauldron, and inside is this inky, swirling black, this like super deep darkness. And Feyre thinks perhaps the entire universe had come from it. Like it just like looks like something that powerful. She can like sense that. Feyre sets one hand on it, and she says it's like painful, but it's also like an ecstatic experience. She like feel everything all at once. And then she takes her other hand and sets it on half of the Book of Breathings and the other on the cauldron. And the book starts to whisper that it needs to be joined, to be freed. And it's like, Feyre, come on, girly, put us together, 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 together. And Feyre starts to kind of lose herself into the whisperings of the book. And Moore tries to snap her out of it by shouting her name. Feyre is gone already. And Feyre realizes that like, oh, Amren was wrong. This book needs to be put together in order to work. And so she slides the 2 halves of the books together. Moore tries to lunge and stop her, but she's too slow. And Cassian says, just give her a minute. Let's see what happens. Like, let's let her cook. This is what Feyre's thinking. I was the book and the cauldron and the sound and the silence. I was a living river through which one flowed into the other, eddying and ebbying over a tide with no end or beginning. The spell, the words. I looked at the paper in my hand, but my eyes did not see. My lips did not move. I was not a tool, not a pawn. I would not be a conduit, not be the lackey of these things. I memorized the spell. I would say it. I would breathe it. I would think it. Feyre's like trying to fight through this like pull of the cauldron and the book, and she can't do it. She can't make her mouth move to say the spell. And then Azriel has her, and he's like shaking her and shouting her name. Like it didn't work at all. She failed. And then there are footsteps on the stairs, and they're no longer alone in the room. Suddenly a handsome man appears, a man with familiar eyes, and he says to them, stupid fool. And it's Jurian. Hi, Jurian. Rhys appears in the room almost immediately after Jurian appears because, like, plan has been foiled. We just got to get the hecky out of here. And one of the first things he does is he comes over to Feyre, and he very sneakily grabs the Book of Breathings from her, and he slips it into his own pocket. He just, like, moves it away from Feyre and into his own jacket. As soon as it's gone, Feyre has, like, kind of released fully from the cauldrons and the book's hold, and she realizes how thoroughly she's failed. She was like, it was my job to say this little spell, and I couldn't do it, and like now we're in here with Jurian. Like, this is not good. And Rhys is like, hey, Jurian, you look good for a corpse. Like, he's clearly just trying to like kind of say something to buy them some time so they can figure out how they're gonna get out of here. And Jurian says to Rhys, last time I saw you, you were warming Amarantha's sheets. And then Jurian turns to Moore, and he says, where is Miriam? And Moore's like, she's dead. And Jurian says, liar. You were always such a liar, Morrigan. Girlie, I thought you were the girl of truth. Apparently she is a liar. That is a lie. We know that to be a lie. I'm confused. Can she lie or no? Apparently she can. And they chat about Miriam for a minute, and then Rhys reaches for Feyre and Moore for Cassian and Azriel, and they try to winnow away, but they can't. The wards kind of like snuck up on them. There weren't strong wards initially when they like first walked in here, but now there has been like a spell that has kind of like bound up all of their magic. And Rhys is like, oh, a new trick. I see, like mentioning this, like the magic that being bound up. And Jurian says, I was sent to distract you while he worked his spell. You won't leave this castle unless he allows you to, or in pieces. And Rhys tries to mist Jurian, but again, he can't access any of his magic. And Jurian says, Didn't you remember? Perhaps you forgot. It was a good thing I was there, awake for every moment, Rhysand. She stole his book of spells to take your power. Like, Amarantha used the King of Hybern's magic to, like, take the High Lord's magic back in, like, the original curse. And so, like, King of Hybern has access to all of these little spells. Jurian spent a little while, like, whining about how hard it was to be an eyeball ring. Okay. Bummer. I, like, don't think Rhys did it. Like, I don't know. Sorry. Like, I don't really understand what Jurian's motivation is supposed to be here. Like, it's unclear to me. I was like, I thought you were on the side of the humans. And now you're allied with the King of Hybern? Yeah, I don't understand. And then Rhys says, it couldn't have been so bad if you're now working for her master. Rhys apparently is also confused. Like, hey, Jurian, why are you on the King of Hybern's side now? I thought we were anti-Amarantha. And Amarantha was, like, his intern. You know? It doesn't totally add up. And Jurian says, your suffering will be long and thorough. Also, why does he hate Rhys so much? Is it because he thinks Rhys helped Amarantha? I don't know. Rhys is literally trying to, like, scoot them out the room. But, like, before they can actually leave, they see this man coming down the stairs. It is the King of Hybern. And the King of Hybern says to them, the trap was so easy. I'm honestly a little disappointed you guys didn't see it coming. I thought it was going to be harder to trap you guys. What am I going to do next week? Jurian shoots an ash bolt through Asriel's chest, which is so mean and rude. So Asriel has a, like, ash bolt, which ashwood is what can kill a fairy. It is through his chest. And then the king explains that this ash bolt is also laced with the blood bane, that same poison that was on those arrows that got Rhys. And if the King of Hybern releases it using his magic, it'll kill Asriel instantly. So you have to go with the King of Hybern if they want Asriel. So Rhys and Cassian carry Asriel up the stairs with them, leaving kind of like a trail of blood. Because even without the poison, like, Az isn't doing great because, you know, like, he's a bolt of wood through his chest, which is bad for you. No one recommends that. 0 out of 10 doctors recommend. Mor is, like, pretty shaken up by all of this. And, like, they keep coming back to the fact that Mor is just, like, distraught. And, like, we're all distraught. I don't even like Asriel that much. I don't dislike him. He just, like, go girl, give me nothing. Just like Elaine over there. Go girl, give me nothing. Both of them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is Az gonna be okay? Like, I care. He's a nice guy. But Feyre keeps being like, Mor is so upset. We're all upset. You know who's probably more upset than Mor? Cassian. Cassian, probably Rhys. Those guys are bestie bros. The King of Hybern, like, disappears the cauldron as they head upstairs, so it comes with them with his magic. Fun. They go upstairs to another throne room. I don't know why they needed to switch rooms. I guess this room is cutie-er, maybe. He wanted to show off his decor. He was like, we can't hang out in the dungeons. That's not even very fun. Let's hang out somewhere fun. And they head up to this throne room, and the king sits on his throne, which is made out of bones, and Feyre looks around and immediately is like, oh yeah, this is where Amarantha learned how to be evil. So that's great. Jurian is behind them, kind of, like, making sure they stay in line as the door, like, slams closed, and they're all kind of locked in here. And then the King of Hybern says, now that I've upheld my end of the bargain, I expect you to uphold yours, talking to someone who's not in the room. And then 2 figures step into the light from the shadows. It's Lucien and Tamlin. And Feyre is just, like, horrified as she stares at Tamlin, who's dressed in Illyrian fighting blades. He's looking a little gaunt, and he got a haircut. Okay? Like, he's not looking super well, but he did get a haircut. And he's looking at Feyre, scanning over her, like, watching how she stands with, like, her group of friends, her family. And Feyre very quickly clocks that Tamlin has been working with the King of Hybern. Okay, great. And Feyre's like, what the heck? That's so rude. And Rhys is like, what was the cost, Tamlin? And Tamlin ignores Rhys's question and says to the king, you have my word. And then Feyre says, what have you done? And the King of Hybern says, we have made a bargain. I give you over, and he agrees to let my forces enter Prythian through his territory, and then use it as a basis to remove that ridiculous wall. So Tamlin was like, if you get me my girlfriend back, you can kill all the humans. From my house. We'll let you have a sleepover. Okay, like, Tamlin, I feel like you didn't even try that hard to get Feyre back. Not that, like, trying hard has ever been, like, a definer of Tamlin. If you remember Under the Mountain, he was like, I wish there was some way for us to get out, but there isn't, so let's make out in the closet. That maybe, like, does track with his character. Cassian says, you're insane. And then Tamlin is like, Feyre, come here. Come here. He calls to her like she's a dog. I don't think he probably does that kissy noise sound, but maybe he does. And then the King of Hybern says to Feyre, you are a very difficult female to get a hold of. Of course, we've agreed that you will work for me once you've been returned home to your husband, but Actually, is it husband or husband-to-be? I can't remember. And Lucien is like, Tamlin, what are you doing? Lucien, what did you think you guys were doing? Why do you think you showed up at Hybern? I don't think you can act completely surprised at this. Like, where did you think you guys were going on the field trip? Anyway, Tamlin's like, I'm taking you home. And the King of Hybern says, also, Jurian wanted the High Lord of the Night Court dead, and to learn who his friends were. It drove him mad that you never revealed it under the mountain. Jurian, have at him. They're yours to kill now if you want. And Feyre's like, I'm not going anywhere with you. There's like multiple conversations happening. A lot is going on. And the King of Hybern like, you will. You'll say it differently when I complete the final part of my bargain. Break the bond between the two of you. And Feyre's like, no thanks. And the King of Hybern is like, yeah, we got to. How else is Tamlin supposed to take his girly home? He can't have a wife that has to come visit the Night Court once a month for a week. That doesn't make any sense. And Feyre's like to Tamlin, she's like pleading with him. She's like, don't let him break the bond. Like, I told you I was fine, that I left on my own accord. And Tamlin is like, you weren't well. He used that bond to manipulate you. Why do you think I was gone so often? I was looking for a way to free you. And then you just left me, even though I was out helping you. And Feyre was like, I left because I was going to die in that house. I was not well. And the King of Hybern pipes in. He's very weirdly obsessed with this relationship drama. The King of Hybern, like Amarantha, is really actually just here to be entertained. He's here for the drama. He's less here for the political power. That seems very much secondary to him, to getting just making messy situations and enjoying watching them unfold. And he says to Tamlin, not what you expected, is it? And Tamlin just growls at him, but he holds out his hand to Feyre again, calling her, come home now, come with me, Feyre, come on. And Feyre's like, literally no. And Tamlin's like, Feyre, come on. And Rhys is not moving in the back, and Feyre realizes he's trying not to let off any smells. He doesn't want anyone to smell that they are mates. It's not going to work. But he's like, if I don't waft any fragrance towards them, it'll be fine. It's not fine. And Jurian is in a bad mood because, I don't know. I guess, is he mad because Rhys was helping Amarantha under the mountain, and so now he's trying to get back at him for that? I don't know, but he has his sword up and he looks like he might try to chop up more. And Azriel is barely alive because he has an ash bolt through his chest, and Cassian's trying to hold Azriel up as he bleeds out on the floor, and no one is doing well on this side of the room. And Feyre was trying to push against the wall. She can't talk to Rhys because their magic is turned off, and so she changes her strategy. Rather than trying to push against these walls that are holding her magic back, she decides to start talking to them, similar to the way she did in Summer Court when she was trying to get through Tarquin's shields. She says to them, I am Fey and I am not Fey, all and none. You do not hold me. I am as you are, real and not, little more than gathered wisps of power. You do not hold me. And then the magic that was holding back Feyre's power just releases. It lets her through, and she turns to Tamlin and Lucien and says, okay, I'll come with you if you leave them alone. Tamlin's like, no, they're monsters. But he actually doesn't really care. He's mostly just wants to get his girlfriend home with him. And so he crosses the floor and grabs her, ready to winnow her out of there. But the magic ward situation has trapped him too. His magic, his winnowing doesn't work. Luckily, Feyre's magic is free now, and she turns to mist and shadow, and she winnows out of Tamlin's reach. And the king is laughing. Again, like Amarantha, he's just here for a good time. He's here for the reality TV situation of it all. Rhys then punches Tamlin in the face. Love. And Feyre is trying to reach Rhys through the bond, but she still can't. And Rhys also can't access his powers because his powers are very firmly Fey. And the King of Hybern's magic is still holding them down. And then Tamlin smells it, and the king smells it too, the mating bond. And the king starts laughing. He's like, I don't believe it. Your bride left you only to find her mate. The mother has a warped sense of humor, it seems. And what a talent. Tell me, girl, how did you unravel that spell? He's just impressed that Feyre was able to get past his little magic spell. And Tamlin is just staring at Feyre with hatred in his eyes over the fact that she's mated to his enemy. And Feyre's like, sorry, I didn't mean to, but what are we gonna do? And she really does mean it. She does kind of feel bad about Tamlin, which is nice. Again, at this point in the story, I'm still I'm not 100% on Team Tamlin here because he is pairing up with the evil guy, but I haven't fully separated for him. We're about to. Don't worry. Don't worry. You could probably guess, if you know my true allegiance, who's my favorite character in the story. When Tamlin messes with that girl, which you will in just a second here, I'm going to be off of Team Tamlin so fast. I have firm boundaries around my girlies. And then Tamlin turns to Rhys and he says, what did you do to her? And suddenly the room is filled with soldiers. Soldiers are like pouring in from all of the doors. And Mor and Cassie and Azriel are like scanning the room, obviously trying to like assess the situation and figure out how they can get out of it. And so Feyre kind of leaves them to that, and she's busy kind of dealing with the drama of it all. She turns to Tamlin again and says, I am not going with you. And even if I did, you spineless, stupid fool for selling us out to them. Do you know what he wants to do with the cauldron? And the king is like, actually, like, I have a plan to like a lot of things, like so many things. And then he snaps his finger and the cauldron reappears and he says, starting right now. He's completely fascinated by the way that the cauldron responds to Feyre. He says to her, look at you, a child of all 7 courts, like and unlike, how the cauldron purrs in your presence. Did you plan to use it? Destroy it with that book? You could do anything you wish. And Feyre just like stares at him and he shrugs and he says, you'll tell me soon enough. And Feyre is like, I made no bargain with you. I'm not going to help you. And the king of Hybern says, no, but your master did, so you will obey. And Feyre says to Tamlin, if you bring me from here, if you take me from my mate, I will destroy you. I will destroy your court and everything you hold dear. And Tamlin says, well, you don't really know what you're talking about, okay? Like, you're not like the brightest. Remember how you couldn't read? Rhys has just like tricked you with his sneaky mind tricks. We'll get you home and we'll clarify things. And Lucien is just standing there he's embarrassed. He's embarrassed with his bestie's behavior. Again, I don't know where he thought he was going. Maybe Tamlin told him they were going out for like ice cream and now he's here at this evil guy's house and like he's having a bad time. But he does feel like, this is not working well with the whole Feyre situation. And I think he's truly embarrassed by it. And then the king opens a side door and he says to Feyre, no, you won't. There will be no destroying. And the human queens walk in, the 4 that are remaining. Remember, the gold one is died, and we don't know what happened to the 6th queen, but probably not something good. And the king says, because you will find, Feyre Archeron, that it is in your best interest to behave. Because after the 4 mortal queens walk in, fear like she had never known enters Feyre's heart as the men drag her sisters, gagged and bound, before the king of Hybern. And then this is when I was done with Tamlin. I said, you brought Nesta here? We're not friends anymore. Her sisters are both dressed in like nightgowns. They were like clearly like snatched from their house. Elaine is literally sobbing. Her gag is like soaked from her tears. And Nesta looks like she's like a hot mess. She looks like she fought like a wildcat, Feyre thinks. And then the king says to Rhys, you've made a very big mistake the day you went after the book. I had no need of it. I was content to let it lie. But the moment your forces started sniffing around, I decided, who better to be my liaison to the human realm than my newly reborn friend, Jurian. And he explains that after Jurian like recovered for a few months from the process of being reborn, he was excited to go see what his former home looked like. And so the king of Hybern sent him back to the mortal lands and the continent to go visit, and he was able to meet with the mortal queens and to convince them to ally with the king of Hybern and not to trust Rhys. He like planted this idea that Rhys would come to them and try to convince them that like he was a good and honorable man and try to get them to give them the book by feeding them like lies about all of his goodness. And the king of Hybern is like, I don't wish to invade the continent. I wish to work with them. And then he compliments Azriel's infiltration attempts, but he's like, actually that just like further proves my point, because clearly you guys were trying to like sneak in, and I warned the queens about that, and so they like know that you guys aren't as benevolent as you claim, clearly. And Feyre is like, they are all liars. If you do not let my sisters go, I will slaughter. But the king cuts in. Do you hear her threats? He's talking to the queens now. The kind of language they use in the night court? Slaughters, ultimatums. They wish to end life. I desire to give it. And the queens are like, yeah, we're already on your team. You don't have to convince us. And then the oldest queen speaks. She says, then show us. Prove this gift that you've mentioned. And Rhys is like, you guys are so stupid. You guys are the dumbest people I've ever met. And the king of Hybern says, are they? Why should they submit to old age and ailments when what I offer is so much better? Eternal youth. Do you deny the benefits? A mortal queen becomes one who might reign forever. Of course, there are risks. The transition can be difficult, but a strong-willed individual will survive. And the oldest queen says, yeah, but like, we don't want to go first. Like we would like to have somebody go in before us. A trial run, so we can make sure that it's safe and sound for us Queenies. And the king is like, obviously, why do you think I asked my dear friend Ianthe to see who Feyre Archeron would appreciate having with her for a mortal life forever? I was going to have the queens, like, tell me where your sisters live, but they refused. They said it was rude to, like, do that. They said it was uncouth. And so I had to ask Ianthe. She did not care about ratting out your sisters. And he's like, consider it my wedding present to you. I'm going to make both your sisters immortal. And Feyre starts like freaking out. And Tamlin's like, wait, what? What's going on? The King of Hybern is like, I think it was supposed to be a surprise. That's probably why Ianthe didn't say anything. She didn't want to ruin the surprise of having Feyre's sisters arrive here. But didn't you ever think to ask Ianthe why she thought I might be able to break the bargain? And Tamlin's like, no, obviously I didn't ask that. Apparently, Ianthe and the King of Hybern are like pals from Under the Mountain times. That's where she went, or one of the places she went while everyone else was under the mountain. And he kind of like talked to her and planted this idea of a Prythian that didn't have high lords, but instead priestesses that would rule over the various courts. And Lucien is like, she sold out Feyre's family to you? Tamlin is even looking upset. And Feyre realizes that, like, this is sort of her fault because she told Ianthe everything about her family. She told them where they lived and what they were like and, like, everything about Nesta and Elaine because Ianthe asked, and she hadn't even realized it was dangerous to say anything to her. Like, they had been friends. And the king is like, well, we didn't sell them out. We saved them from the shackles of mortal death. Ianthe suggested that they were strong-willed women like their sister, and I have no doubt that they'll survive. And they can prove to our queens that it will be done. And Feyre is like, no, please don't do that to them. And then the king says, brace yourself. And then he, like, activates the cauldron, and power, like, explodes into the room. And Rhys throws himself over Feyre to shield her, and Cassian and Azriel like very close to the cauldron, and Cassian in order to shield Azriel, who's already like not doing well, he throws his whole body over Azriel, and he flares his wings out to like cover Azriel, and the power just like shreds through it. His wings are like hanging in tatters afterwards. And Rhys lunges for the king, but he is hit again, and he can't get past like the power of the king, and he doesn't have any magic of his own. And Feyre's sisters are like screaming and crying, and Feyre pretty quickly realizes that Elaine isn't crying out in pain, but in warning, because Tamlin is running to grab her. He's trying to use this moment of magic as like a moment to like come over to the night court side of the room and snatch Feyre away from Rhys. Feyre throws a knife at him. They fight a little bit. And then she's trying to figure out a way where she can get over to Cassian to try to heal him, because she knows her blood has magic in it, the healing power of the Dawn Court. So she's trying to figure out how to do that. But like there's too much happening in the room. People are screaming, crying, throwing up. It's just chaos. And then the king is looking over at Mor, and he says to Mor, what a mighty queen you are, what a prize. And Azriel, even with a blade or with a bolt through his chest, says to him, don't you touch her. Okay, Azriel, like, you're gonna be able to help. There's just like a lot happening. Rhys is standing between the king and Feyre, and Feyre's still trying to reach Cassian to try to help him. And then the king is like, okay, stop. Can you guys please stop interrupting? I really just don't want to dip these girlies in the cauldron and then get the queenies in there, okay? And Elaine is like shaking and crying and sobbing as she is dragged forward. And Tamlin is now yelling, stop. Tamlin, get out of here. The king ignores him too. And then Lucien asks him, like yells and asks them to stop. Again, no one is listening. But I like appreciate that we do try the swipe or no swiping method of dealing with our enemies always. I do think that should be a first resort. And Tamlin is like, this was not part of our deal. Stop this now. And the king replies, I literally don't care. He's like, okay, but this is the way that's going to be the most beneficial to me. Remember, I'm the evil guy in the story. And Tamlin tries to throw himself like in front of the king, but the king's magic instantly like leashes him and ties him to a wall. Elaine is taken by 2 guards, hoisted up. She's like kicking and crying, and then she is like slammed into the side of the cauldron. Lucien is like begging for them to stop. Feyre is begging for them to stop. She says, there is no need for more proof. I am proof. Jurian is proof. Like, clearly the cauldron works. You don't need to dip 2 more girls for the queens to find out. And the old queen says, you are a thief and a liar. You conspired with our sister. Your punishment should be the same as hers. Consider this a gift instead. And then Elaine's foot hits the water, and she screams out in horror. And Feyre is crying and begging, and Nesta is still fighting, screaming through her gag. Elaine, who Nesta would have killed and whored and stolen for. Elaine, who had been gentle and sweet. Elaine, who was to marry a lord's son who hated fairies. And then the guards shove Elaine into the water in a single brutal movement, her whole like body and head going under the water. And Nesta's screaming is the only sound in the room. Cassian is trying to like crawl towards Nesta, who is like screaming in despair. But he can't. Obviously, he's like dealing with his own wing situation, which is bad. And then Elaine emerges from the cauldron. The cauldron like tips over as the king of Hybern says, behold, and more water that seems possible cascades out, and it's this like black, and Feyre describes it as like smoke-coated water. And Elaine falls out with it as if thrown by a wave. She washes onto like the stone floor in this throne room. face down, and her legs are like so pale and delicate, and Feyre can't even remember the last time she saw them bare. Elaine like always dressed in like long formal gowns, and she's just looking so like frail and fragile, and her nightgown is completely see-through because it is so wet, and it's like rucked up like halfway up her thighs. The queens push forward to try to see like what happened to her in the cauldron, and then Elaine sucks in a breath. She's alive. Nesta starts screaming again because Elaine is like glowing. She's even more beautiful than before, but her ears are pointed. She'd become Fae. And the youngest queen steps forward, the youngest one now, and says, so we can't survive. And then the King of Hybern isn't thrilled with, or isn't satisfied with just this one example. He pulls Nesta in. He says, the Hellcat now, if you'd be so kind. And it was Nesta's turn, and she goes silent. And Cassian stirs again. He like tries to like reach towards Nesta, even as he's like in utter agony. Elaine is just lying on the ground, shivering on the stones, her nightgown completely sheer, and the guards around her are laughing at her. And Lucien says, do not just leave her on the damned floor. And he takes off her jacket and he covers her with it, so at least she's not like naked in this room. And she flinches away from him, just like afraid, obviously. She's had a rough day. And then the guards haul Nesta towards the cauldron. Feyre thinks to herself, there were different kinds of torture, I realized. There was the torture I had endured, the torture Rhys had endured, and then there was this, the kind Rhys had worked so hard those 50 years to avoid, the nightmare that haunted him, to be unable to move, to fight, while your loved ones were broken around you. And Nesta is fighting the guards every step of the way. Like, she's not making it easy for them. She's clawing and kicking and bucking, but it's not enough. They're, like, much bigger than her. Elaine is still shaking on the ground, just, like, completely soaked in freezing, and Cassian is like literally every time Nesta screams, Cassian like flinches. Even half dead, his wings completely shredded, Feyre thinks an answer to some call in his blood, a promise he'd made her, but the pain knocks him under again. He's not able to like do anything. He's like too shredded. And the king says, put her under, and Nesta screamed. Even though she's like so much smaller than the men that are holding her, they're having a hard time getting her under, but finally they manage, and her head is almost under when she thrashes one more time, freeing one pale arm, her teeth bared. Nesta points one finger at the King of Hybern, one finger, a curse, a damning, a promise. And as her head was forced under, shoved down so violently it made me flinch, the King of Hybern had the good sense to look unnerved. I love my girl. And Nesta is under the water, and the water goes like flat for a second, like it goes completely black and still. And Feyre is like so freaked out by this, she like throws up on the ground because she thinks for a moment that Nesta may have died. But then the cauldron like tips over again, and Lucien goes to like grab Elaine out of the way so she's not like covered in water again, and he is just like holding her up towards him. Tamlin's bonds are released for them all for some reason, and no one really even pays attention to him. Not when Nesta is like sprawled out in the stones. And Feyre can tell immediately that something about Nesta is different from whatever happened to Elaine. Nesta is not the same. Even before Nesta takes her first breath, Feyre feels it. She thinks, as if the cauldron in making her had been forced to give more than it wanted, as if Nesta had fought, even as she went under, and had decided that if she was being dragged into hell, she was taking the cauldron with her, as if that finger she pointed was now a death promise to the King of Hybern. And Nesta takes a breath, and Feyre looks at her sister, and every element of her is like somehow magnified. Her beauty even more magnificent, her ears pointed. And when Nesta looks at Feyre, she can just see that the rage and power and cunning in her sister. But then it like is kind of like replaced almost immediately by like the horror and shock of like what has happened to her and to Elaine. And she immediately gets up and she runs over to Lucien, who's holding Elaine still, and she says, get off of her. And Elaine is kind of like slipping on the floor as Nesta like pulls her away. The floor is covered in 2 bathtubs full of water, so it's a little slippery. Okay. And Elaine is like looking over Nesta's shoulder as she gets like dragged away. She's looking at Lucien for the first time, and as their eyes like really meet, Lucien like kind of is like taken aback in shock, and he says, you're my mate. He's just like staring at her. Elaine is staring back, and Nesta doesn't love what just happened, and she says, she is no such thing. No, she doesn't. Get away from her, you creeper. The King of Hybern loves this. Again, he's here for the drama, and this is certainly the drama. He says, interesting, so very interesting. And then he turns to the queens and he's like, you guys, looks like you might even get a mate out of this whole situation. Sick. What a fun time. The youngest queen steps forward, ready to begin her turn with the cauldron, and Feyre is ready to kill them all, but Rhys interrupts. He offers to make a bargain. But Feyre doesn't like this. She knows Rhys will give too much. he would be willing to give anything to get them out of there safely. And she feels like this is kind of her responsibility. She's the one who failed to give the spell. And she thinks about everything that is waiting for her back at home, her wedding ring and her sister's lives that they're not going to be able to return to, her fiance who one day might hunt Elaine down, all the things that Feyre wants to paint but never will be able to. And she thinks, but for them, for my family, of both blood and now of my own choosing, for my mate, the idea that hit me did not seem so frightening. And so I was not afraid. When the girlies are not afraid, we know things about to get good. Feyre drops to her knees and begins sobbing and pulling at her hair and like kind of screaming, using the distraction to once again slip past the king's spell that is holding their magic in check. Rhys reaches for her, but she sends this like flash of white light through like out into the room, and it like tests for all the like limits and kind of like unwinds the magic. I'm a little confused on what's happening here. She's able to essentially like unwind the magic that is holding them all back, that it has bound their magic in this place. And she hopes that like Rhys will just kind of like catch on and play along. She like sends out a little bit through the bond as well. She's like hoping Rhys can like hear her. Everyone is staring at her as she like glows and screams in the middle of the room. And then she turns to Tamlin and she just says, Tamlin, as if she's like coming out of like a stupor of some sort. And again, she cries out like, Tamlin! And Rhys is confused. And the king is watching. And then she turns to Rhys and she shouts, what did you do to me? And she turns back to Tamlin and she says, what did he do? And then silently down the bond, she says to Rhys, get them out. Get my sisters out. Please play along. Please. And Rhys does play along. He says to Feyre, how did you get free? And Jurian is like completely stunned by this. Feyre turns back to Tamlin and says, don't let him take me again. Don't let him. Don't. And Tamlin is like, Feyre, like, finally, she's come to her senses. We got him. Got him. Tricked him good. She cries harder and again begs down the bond. Get my sisters out. I ripped the wards open for all of you. Get them out. But like nothing is coming back through the bond. I don't think she's 100% sure that like Rhys is receiving these messages, and he definitely can't send anything back. She's able to kind of like slip around the walls, but like even if the messages are getting to him, they're not coming back. Out loud, she says, don't let him take me. I don't want to go back. And Moore, who's holding up Cassian, is crying too, but like Feyre can see in her face that like she understands what's happening. And Moore turns to Rhys and says, what did you do to that girl? And Rhys just cocks his head and says, how did you do it, Feyre? And Feyre thinks like, oh, we were always so good at playing together. This is like one last play, one last performance. And Feyre turns to the king and says, break it. Break the bond, the bargain, the mating bond. He made me do it. He made me swear it. And Rhys is like, no. And Feyre ignores him. And she thinks to herself, even as my heart broke, even as I knew he hadn't meant to say it, to do it, I begged the king, prayed he wouldn't notice the ruined wards, the door I'd left wide open. Feyre says to the king, I know you can do it, just free me from it. And Rhys again is like, no. And Feyre turns to Tamlin and she says, no more death, no more killing, no more. Take me home, then let them go. Please, tell him it's part of the bargain and let them go, but no more, please. Even Cassian understands now. She like looks over and she sees it in his pain-glazed eyes that he knows and he understands. And Feyre thinks to herself about the court of dreamers, that she had belonged to a court of dreams and dreamers, and like what a privilege that had been. And for their dreams, for what they had worked for, and for what they had sacrificed, she could do it. She sends out one last message through the bond and just says, get my sisters out. Then she looks over to Tamlin and she says, no more, just take me home. And Tamlin says, okay. And he tells the king to let them go and to break her bond and to be done with it. And he's like, Tamlin says her sisters are going to come with them and that the king has already like crossed too many lines. Like, this is enough. And Jurian tries to argue saying like, hey, what about my end of the deal? I got to keep and kill Rhys if I wanted. And the king just like ignores Jurian. And Rhys once again is like, no. He like can't play along with the idea of like breaking the bond. That seems like too terrible for him to even bear. And Tamlin says he doesn't even care if she's Rhys's mate, doesn't care if Rhys thinks he's entitled to her, that she's his. He says one day he's going to repay every bit of pain that she's felt, every bit of suffering and despair. And maybe one day, if she decides she wants to end Rhys, Tamlin will be happy to help. And Feyre is just like repeating again and again through the bond to like telling Rhys to like walk away, to take her sisters with him and just like get out of there. And Tamlin says to the king, do it. And Rhys is like, no, once again. And then the king points at Feyre and she starts screaming as pain like rips through her arm and through her chest. And then Rhys is on the ground too, roaring and screaming in Feyre's name as Feyre like thrashes on the ground, feeling like she's being shredded apart. She feels like she's dying as the bond between the two of them is snapped. Feyre faints, and when she opens her eyes, only a few seconds have passed. Moore is busy like hauling Rhys away. He's still like flustered and hurting from the pain of the bond being severed. Tamlin yanks the glove off of her left hand, and the tattoo is completely gone. Feyre is like sobbing as the like bond between her and Rhys has like been shattered. And Tamlin is hugging her and she like hates it. She like almost throws up at the smell of him. She's like, I hate your guts, blonde man. And Moore lets go of Rhys for a second, and he starts crawling towards Cassian and Azriel. And the king says to Rhys, you are free to go. Your friend's poison is gone. The wings, on the other hand, are a bit of a mess. And Feyre is still begging through the bond. Don't fight it. Don't say anything. Take my sisters. The wards are down. She lets herself look at Rhys, Cassian, Moore, and Azriel one more time. Their faces are cold and enraged, but she knows the love is there, that they understand, that they see the tears sliding down her face as she says goodbye. And they know that they're not tears of kind of like pain, but of tears of like sadness of having been forced away from her new family. Moore winnows to Lucien and Feyre's sisters and essentially like shows this like serves two purposes. One, to get over to Elain and Nesta, but also to show Rhys that Feyre has like put the wards down. And she shoves Lucien out of the way, grabs the girls, and immediately winnows out of there. Lucien freaks out because they just stole his mate from him, but like, what is he gonna do? And Tamlin doesn't care because Tamlin is the worst. And then I think Az and Rhys and Cassian winnow out of there as well. And then the king tells the queens it's their turns. They're excited. They're like snipping at each other, pushing and squabbling over who goes first. And then Jurian comes over to Lucien and says, you know what Illyrian bastards do to pretty females? You won't have a mate left, at least not one that's useful to you. And Lucien is obviously ticked at the statement. It's like a mean thing to say. And Feyre just says to Jurian, you can go to hell, you hideous prick. Feyre is like not panicking about her sisters being taken, obviously, because she like orchestrated the whole thing. But like Lucien seems like a little like, why are you upset about this whole your sisters being gone? Like, why am I more upset about Elain being gone and you're like not upset at all? And Feyre says to them, we'll get her back. But Lucien can tell something is off. Like, he can tell that she's not freaked out enough, that if her sisters were really like taken from her, that she would be like upset. And she's kind of just like and then Tamlin has no idea what's going on because he's not smart enough to really clock that. Then Feyre turns to Tamlin and says, Tamlin, please take me home. And the king is like, what? Where's the Book of Breathings? I could feel it in here before, but I can't anymore. Where is it? I thought you had it. And Feyre is like, your mistake. And then he gets mad and he says to Tamlin, when the book is retrieved, I expect your presence here. And Tamlin is getting ready to winnow her out. And Feyre turns back to the king, to Jurian, and to the queens gathered around the cauldron. And she says to them, I will light your pyres myself for what you did to my sisters. And then they winnow away. We only have 2 chapters left. We're almost done. And chapter 68 is in Rhysand's perspective. Our first Rhysand chapter. And we get Rhysand's perspective because we need to figure out what happened to the rest of the crew. They're headed back to Velaris. They land back in the townhouse in Velaris. Amren is there waiting for them. Immediately she goes over to Cassian and is trying to help heal his wings, but her magic isn't enough. They're gonna need healers for like both boys very quickly. Azriel like will die if he doesn't get a healer very quickly, and Cassian will lose his wings if he doesn't get a very talented healer very quickly. And Rhys knows that not having his wings would destroy Cassian. He would not be able to live without him. And Amren says to Rhys, where is she? And Moore is not there. Moore has taken Elain and Nesta somewhere. And Rhys knows that that's not who Amren is talking about. And the book starts to echo Amren. It goes, where is she? Where is she? Where is she? And Rhys is like, get the book out of here. He's like, I can't stand it. He jumps the pieces on the ground. And he's just like very unsettled by the book's presence. And then Amren repeats the question to him. Where is she? Moore appears then, and she heads straight over to Azriel and is trying to like tend to the wound and use some of her healing magic to start to like knit together his flesh. So again, he doesn't die. He's like on death's door. We'll get him fixed right up, but he's not doing well. And Amren for the 3rd time says, where is she? And Rhys can't even bring himself to say it. He can't tell Amren that his wife, they're married, that his mate is gone. And so Moore does it. Tamlin offered passage through their lands in our heads on platters in exchange for trapping Feyre, breaking her bond and bringing her back to the Spring Court. But Ianthe betrayed Tamlin. She told the king where to find Feyre's sisters. The king brought them with the queens to prove he could make mortals immortal. He put them in the cauldron. We could do nothing as they were turned. He had us by the balls. And Amren goes, Rhysand. And Rhys says we were out of options. Feyre knew it, so she pretended to free herself from our control, pretended that I had kept a leash on her mind, pretended that she hated us, and told Tamlin she'd go home, but only if the killing stopped, if we were allowed to go free. And Amren's like, what of the bonds? Like, what of the bond between you guys? And Mor says she asked the king to break the bond, and he obliged. And Rhys thinks to himself that it had felt like dying, like it had felt like being ripped in two. And Amren's like, that's not impossible. You can't break a mating bond. The king is a fool. That bond can't be broken. And Mor says, but the king, he did break it. I saw it. And Rhys explains that the king broke the bargain bond between them, but he didn't break the mating bond. He wasn't able to tell the difference. He would have had to dig to like the very center of Rhys's being to break the mating bond. Essentially, kind of implying that like if he'd broken the mating bond, it would have killed both of them. But the king couldn't tell the difference. And Feyre like knew that. And Rhys says, now my mate is in our enemy's hands. And Amren's like, okay, so go get her right now. And Rhys says no. And everyone in the room is like staring at him. They're like, what the heck? What do you mean? And he says, weren't you listening to what Feyre said? She promised to destroy him from within. And Mor says, she's going to his house to take him down. And Rhys says, she is now a spy with a direct line to me. What the king of Hybern does, where he goes, what his plans are, she will know and report back. And he thinks to himself, between us, faint and soft, hidden so none might find it, lay a whisper of color and joy, of light and shadow, a whisper of her, our bond. Amren's like, okay, well, she's your mate, not a spy, so go get her. And Rhys says, she is my mate and my spy, and she is the high lady of the night court. And Mor is like, excuse me, what? What? And Rhys, he like runs his finger down the bond, just like sends this like soothing touch towards Feyre. And he says if they had removed her other glove, they would have found a second tattoo on her right arm, the twin to the other, inked last night when we crept out and found a priestess, and I swore her in as my high lady. And Amren says, not as your consort. And Rhys says, no, not consort, not wife. I swore her in as high lady of the night court, my equal in every way. She would wear my crown, sit on my throne beside me, never sidelined, never designated to breeding and parties and child rearing, my queen. This part like kind of makes me tear up. And then he feels a little answering response from Feyre down the bond, a little glimmer of love. And Rhys like tries to like keep himself together at the relief that he feels to know that she's okay for now. And Mor says, you mean to tell me that my high lady is now surrounded by enemies? And Rhys says, I mean to tell you that your high lady made a sacrifice for her court, and we will move when the time is right. And Amren says, until then what? What of the cauldron of the book? And Rhys says, until then we go to war. Okay, fun. Then we switch back to Feyre's perspective. She's just landing in the spring court post-winnowing. It is like quiet and beautiful, but immediately she's taken back to how much this place feels like a prison. How much she misses Velaris just like instantly. But she like smiles and says to Tamlin, I thought I'd never see it here again. And Tamlin replies, I thought you never would either. You didn't think you were going to get her back, Tamlin? Embarrassing. And Feyre internally is like, I'm going to literally kill you. I'm going to cut you into little pieces. She doesn't actually say that till later. She does talk about chopping him up. And she's thinking about the mating bond that is still like pulsing firmly in her chest, and how the king of Hybern had no idea how deep he would have needed to go to truly remove it. But the bargain is gone, and that stings. Like, that was painful, but like the bond remains. And Feyre thinks, we had always been good at playing together. I had not doubted him, had not said anything but yes, when he had taken me to the temple that night before, and I'd sworn my vows to him, to Velaris, and to the night court. A high lady? There's no such thing as high ladies. And Rhys said, we'll talk about that later. And he meant it. They did talk about it later, when he was swaying her in as one. She feels that touch from Rhys that we just saw from his perspective, her mating bond hidden beneath kind of like the scars of where the bargain had been before. And she sends just like a similar feeling back, but outwardly she like remains calm. And she tells Tamlin, it feels as if it was some dream or nightmare, but I remembered you. And when I saw you there today, I started clawing at it, fighting, because I knew it might be my only chance. And Lucien is like, how did you break free from his control? This doesn't really add up. Lucien is not on board with this at all. Tamlin ignores this question. Lucian's like, this is not adding up. And Tamlin is like, stop trying to ruin my day, Lucien. Can this just be a good thing? Tamlin says, are you hurt? And Feyre's like, I don't know. I don't remember. And she just like acts grateful, acts as if Tamlin had saved her while she's trying to restrain herself from like ripping his eyeballs out of his head. he tells her, Tamlin says, no, don't thank me. Like, you saved yourself. Rest and we'll talk later. I need to find Ianthe and talk to her. Talk to Ianthe? Talk to Ianthe? You're going to give her a stern talking to? By talk to, I hope you mean cut her up into little pieces and feed her to the wolves in the garden. Unfortunately, he does not. Out loud, Feyre says to him, I want to be a part of it this time. No more shutting me out, no more guards. Please, I have so much to tell you about them. Bits and pieces, but I can help. I can help you get my sisters back. Let me help you. But internally, Feyre's like, help me bring this court down from the inside. I'm going to be the worsty worst. I'm going to rip this place up into little pieces and bury it in a pit so deep no one will ever be able to find it. I'm going to ruin you. And Tamlin says, we'll start over. Do things differently. While you were gone, I realized I'd been wrong. I'm so sorry. And Feyre replies, it doesn't matter now. I'm home. And Tamlin says, forever. And Feyre repeats, forever. I'm sure that tasted bitter in her mouth. And Lucien is just staring at her. Like, he clearly sees through the lies. He's like, guys, she was having a nice time over there. I saw her. As if he knows about the second tattoo beneath her glove, hidden behind a glamour. As if he knows that they've let a fox into the hen house and can do nothing, not unless he wants to lose his mate forever. Feyre gives him a sweet, sleepy smile. So our game begins. And so, Tamlin unwittingly leads the High Lady of the Night Court into the heart of his territory. I remember reading this the first time and this being like such a like, you're like horrified ending because like finally Rhys and Feyre are together. They're together for like 2 days and then they're ripped apart again. It's like kind of heart-wrenching, but also I think the only way a good trilogy can work. I like think a separation is a necessary component of like a really solid romantasy. I think it just like really helps because sometimes the issue with romantasy is like once they get together, you're like, okay, now what? But I feel like if you have them separate for a while, they have to like fight their way back to each other, solve the problem. Anyway, so good, so delightful. I'm so excited for ACOWAR. It will probably be a while. I'm going to warn you of that. I was just making my schedule out for like the summer months, and we do need to get through some Crowns of Nyaxia stuff because the next Crowns of Nyaxia book is coming out at the end of August. I want to make sure we get those out, and I do need to, the Magnolia Parks girlies deserve a video. Okay, they deserve a video. I made part 1 of the second and third book literally like 3 months ago, and so I think I'm going to be making them part 2, and then we have the Crowns of Nyaxia, and then we'll circle back to ACOWAR, but it probably won't be until August. Sorry guys, but it'll be a good time. You will like barely even, there'll be other stuff. You'll be okay. And then we'll come back. It'll be so much fun. We'll do ACOWAR, and then we have the Christmas book, and then we have Silver Flames, which are all just like so good. Like these are 5-star books. Actually, I've never read Court of Frost and Starlight. I don't think that one's a 5-star. I mean, maybe it will be for me. I've never read it. We'll find out together. Oh, also I'm doing a Throne of Glass video. I'm doing a Throne of Glass video essay. I've been working on it for literal months and months and months. I'm so excited about it. If you loved my Throne of Glass videos, obviously you're going to love this one. It's a goodie. It's going to be so good. That's coming out in the next couple weeks. So good stuff, but a little ACOTAR break. I mean, unless I change my mind and I decide I am missing ACOWAR too much and we got to slip some of the videos in there. You never can tell. Or like if Sarah is like, hey guys, the next ACOTAR book is coming out in like September, then I'll rearrange my whole schedule and like we'll make sure we get all the recaps done before then. I don't think that's going to happen at this point. I think we probably are not getting an ACOTAR book this year. Upsetting. Although like we still have some time. I feel like if we haven't heard by like the end of June, we probably aren't getting one, but we still have a little time where I feel like it could possibly be announced. I will let you go because I feel like I've just been kind of yapping here at the end. But I hope you enjoyed this. I really did. This was really fun to revisit this book that I had a really complicated relationship initially with, but have grown to like really, really enjoy and love. All right. I will see you in the next video. Bye.